Evening, everybody. I did actually have a chance to start at 7 o'clock sharp, and I didn't take it, and I apologize for that. But as it is, it saves me the trouble of a little bit of work that I would have needed to do after the stream, which means if there's an opportunity to extend things out a little bit, I'll feel a little more comfortable about that without having to give up on or on sleep or anything like that. I still have quite a bit that I need to get through, but I'm going to be a little bit less stressed, I think. So let's just jump into Terra Invicta. I've got my tags, we've got equality settings, all good. Now, I must apologize to the YouTube audience because I did a dumb thing. So I think a few of you may have noticed that there's a long gap between the game, like the actual stream, and the actual stream, and then the VOD becoming available. And this is just really because the days on which videos will be uploaded will normally be Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday. And of course, if I miss a Tuesday, a Saturday, or a Sunday, that sort of puts a delay on things. And so, the number of broadcasts being generated relative to the number of broadcasts going live, like that gap just sort of grows. There's a couple of ways that maybe I'll think about addressing that, but the real dilemma here was just I wanted to clear out a couple of things. There's someone who I host every once in a while who does like these clip or these this is a nice little update. I should note that there was an update to Terra Invicta today, which we loaded up. But yeah, anyway, so basically if there's a clip in my if there's a clip in my clips folder, it's going to pick one of them at random when they do a shout out. Now that's a very nice feature and all, but the tendency is that, if there's just a random clip that pops up, it's very confusing and uninteresting. I think most people tend to clip by mistake rather than, having a particular sick play. And I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this response. Like when I say, I'm not really sure what's going on with that. And the response is, oh, well, you should be maintaining your clip folder. And I'm like, do I? Like, do I need to be adjusting the way that I manage my stream? Do I need to be putting in some extra time for your shout outs? I'm sure it's intended as a nice thing, but like, obviously it's a little obnoxious to, to have to deal. Like if someone were to clip this, it wouldn't exactly show me off in a positive or negative light. It would just be confusing. How you doing, Vanguard Master? Thank you for sharing your slide deck. I will try to take a look at that within the next couple of days. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it tonight, but I at least gave you some videos to look at. So that'll be my excuse for not being a little more switched on. But yeah, so I mean, again, I don't want to sort of like suggest that person's a big old jerk for doing that. Like, I'm sure it's, again, like I said, well intentioned. It just has this nasty side effect of putting the responsibility on, the person being shouted out to do extra maintenance that maybe they don't necessarily want to do. But yeah, so anyways, I was trying to at least follow the spirit of things, and a consequence of this is I actually deleted last week's stream before I uploaded it to YouTube, and I feel very bad about that. The bit of good news, though, is that ultimately I did not make a ton of progress. We do have some new tech, and I'm actually going to have to go and grab my tablet so that I can keep track of the progress of science. I think we're still constructing the stuff on Havelock Base. We have gotten a bit more of the control point cap, And we've improved our characters and all of that, but ultimately, oh yeah, actually, sorry, I guess there was one big thing. We did finally see an alien on the world. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's just one of these things. I feel very foolish about. It's actually been a long time since I've skipped something like that, and I feel a bit bad just because I did have a good track record with this Terra Invicta playthrough. So I feel out of the episodes to be lost, last week's is not necessarily the worst because ultimately we didn't really make substantial progress towards building ships. But for those of you wondering what happened between the two playthroughs, that was it. That was my my sort of reckless targeting of a video. But again, it's not. There's not a huge loss there. It did not say take me to your leader. What else? Oh yeah, I'll get the disclosure. So I do need to pick up my tablet before I really sink into the game. But I did want to take a quick second here and just acknowledge that I was given a copy of this game by Hooded Horse, who are the publisher. Very grateful for that. And again, it's always a tricky proposition because I don't know where the Kickstarter keys come from. So I was a Kickstarter backer to the game, which, presumably, hey Boomerang, how you doing? Presumably that would have gotten me a copy of the game as well. But the easy way for me to distinguish this is that I was given a streamer copy of the demo that was brought out that enabled a couple of features specifically for streamers. And more importantly, it's better to overstate the connection rather than understate, within limits. And more importantly, I have definitely received keys for games that I haven't been a Kickstarter backer on from Hooded Horse Interactive, who, as a result of Terra Invicta, I first found out about, I think are doing really interesting things in terms of strategy games, and certainly have been very kind in terms of their attention and hooking me up with material that I think makes for, hopefully, good streams. That's obviously up to you to decide. But I also hope is sort of helping people connect with the really interesting things that they are doing. One of the ones I'm most looking forward to is Espiocracy. Obviously, I've been looking forward to Terra Invicta as well. And then Against the Storm is one that we've been putting some time into, and I do intend to return to at some point. I was thinking of doing that today, actually, but I have kind of locked into Terra Invicta. But with all of that in mind, when you are given a key is something of value. It is given specifically for press purposes. I haven't been asked to say anything about it, but I do want to get that disclosure up front so that you all can kick back and enjoy the show. Now, I do apologize for running off. I have my coffee. I have everything that I need for a broadcast, except for the fact that I do like taking notes while I play Terra Invicta, and I forgot to bring the device where I'm holding all my notes. So I'm going to be back in less than 2 minutes. It should just be... I know where the tablet is. I don't necessarily know where the pencil is. But yeah, shouldn't take more than 2 minutes. So I'll see you all in a little bit. I won't even put up the sign or anything like that. It was all where I thought it would be, which is usually a first for me. And sorry, I just saw your message here, Vanguard Master. Doing all right, no rush on that. Like I said, I realized it was a quick spur of the moment thing. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to get replies until the end of the week at the latest, so I was wholly unprepared to make one today. No, I mean, hey, it's I'm actually happy that you got those responses, because I mean, again, I have my intuitive understanding of things. Whoa, what's going on here? Sorry, I just had a locked note for some reason. Okay, so we had September 16th. Those values are written down. We're going to be finding out the change to the science. I think we're good to go there. I'm going to clear out the queue. But yeah, Vanguard Master, I mean, again, I talk about this a lot, especially when you're sort of around, because I realize that I have I have some background of things which can be helpful in terms of, giving a perspective on matters. Obviously, I don't have the industry experience, which can be very relevant to some cases. But likewise, when you are dealing with problems that maybe people haven't necessarily solved in an industry sense, it can be beneficial to get that outside perspective. So, for instance, I think it's Tim Benders is the founder of Hooded Horse, and I believe their background is I believe they were a consultant for McKinsey, and then I think their education actually was it was something about Chinese culture, and I don't recall the exact background. But I mean, again, like, it's not one of these single-minded pursuits, started playing Mario Brothers, as soon as I could pick up a controller, and then, single-mindedly worked towards becoming, the head of the founder of the most exciting strategy publisher. This is like, there's a reason why a broad experience can be really helpful for some topics. But on the other hand, right, I also do know in some cases when I'm speculating, and if I happen to just be in a very convincing tone, sometimes people might be making decisions that are not necessarily working. Oh, that's very cool, Vanguard Master. That's good luck. But yeah, no, the thing is that one of the things I don't know about, I know what I've seen inside of videos, and I've seen what I've read or sort of heard through the grapevine, but I don't actually know what the hit rate is when you give unsolicited kind of pitches to a given publisher. So, for instance, if you, and I'll get to the game immediately after this, but I think this is kind of interesting, especially given the fact that apparently you've reached out to Hooded Horse. If you think about somebody writing a novel, and if you go and try to give that to a publisher, most of the time what you'll be faced with is, we do not accept unsolicited manuscripts. If you've got an idea for a screenplay and you try to send that off to people in, and you try to send that off to people in Hollywood, most of them won't even acknowledge that they've received it. They'll pretty much just throw them away right away for the very simple reason that there is a long and very sad history of people, basically suing a production company for stealing a script idea that was never read but bears a certain similarity. And to give you an idea of how regularly this happens, in the year that Titanic was released, 20th Century Fox released an adaptation of Great Expectations, which had as sort of like this pivotal development in the romance story, the leading man drawing the leading lady in the nude. It's the exact same scene practically as happens in Titanic. Now, Titanic was obviously under a lot of, it was kind of under lock and key, so nobody really knew what the Cameron picture was going to be doing. But surely at some point somebody in 20th Century Fox could have pointed out to, one of the productions, hey, we've got two movies with the same scene in it. And of course, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Great Expectations was released after Titanic, so it was considered to be, a ripoff of the Titanic scene, even though I believe it may have actually been written and shot before the Titanic scene. The source for that, by the way, is a book called What Just Happened, Bitter Hollywood Tales from the Front Line by Art Linson, which is a book I very much enjoy. It was also adapted into a movie, which, I don't know, I saw it, but I didn't find it all that memorable. But anyways, so, this gives you an idea of how hard it is for people to keep track of quote-unquote ideas. Now, so with that in mind, you're usually not going to get something read unless you have an agent, and then, of course, the difficulty now is it's really hard to even get an agent for these areas. So that's sort of my prior going into what your experience is right now, Vanguard Master. And I have no idea, to a certain extent, games publishers should be they should cast a wide net, because you want to find the most promising projects, right? Like, they're not going to make their money if they can't identify projects that they can provide that support for. But on the other hand, right, there's only so much bandwidth, right? You also need to be able to evaluate these projects. And so, there's a lot of people making games. I don't know how many of them are pursuing publishing arrangements. And so it's I actually appreciate you kind of coming back and saying what your experience has been. Just because, again, it's one of these things where, based on other creative industries I know about, it's really, really hard to get anybody to even pay attention to you. But gaming, you can see it going both ways. Either it's so new and there's enough potential benefit from looking that people will be more open, or alternatively, because it is so saturated with people who want to make a game, that the channels are too clogged, and you kind of have to know someone, a little bit like trying to get on Steam. So anyways, I'd love to hear your progress, and obviously I will do my absolute best to give you feedback in terms of the slide deck, but I did say that already. So all right, let's clear this all out. I'll keep a couple of things, like I think this is just talking about the location. Yeah, we've encountered the aliens. So we couldn't do anything to the alien in Tehran. That also probably would have raised the threat level anyway. We should have somebody already investigating the activity. We've got somebody clearing out rebuilding the Defend Interest mission in Canada. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you can see the goal up here, construct a space dock module. I'm not going to do that until our mining operations are up and running. And we're just going to continue doing the thing that we've been doing on Earth. We're going to be trying to push our interests in the terrestrial sphere and, work towards our space operations.
Our interests.
I put the right people in the right places, and our control of Canada is now protected until April 30th, 2027. Enemy factions trying to wrest control from us there will suffer significant penalties. Yeah, no worries. I mean, don't hesitate to bring it up inside of Twitch chat as well. I don't want to dwell. So there's a problem about insisting repeatedly how much you don't care about something, because it really undermines your point. But I think some of you know that I've had a video that I prepared for Brace Yourself Games. They paid me to do this. Second time they did so, and I love doing videos like this. I do admittedly prefer doing it live. But I also know there's a certain trust thing. I have been a little cheeky in terms of some of the Twitch and some of the Steam chat comments when people are complaining about the talking parts. Mind you, I also don't necessarily identify myself as the person on the video, so I figure that's kind of the balance. But yeah, inevitably you have sort of the worry that if it's live, you don't know if the broadcaster is going to keep their cool during a broadcast. And I think most of you have kind of seen the Cultist Simulator ones. You kind of know that I can put the game face on when it's live. But the thing is that so many of you will know me, of course, through the Twitch broadcast, in which I'm willing to talk about things that are not necessarily directly related to the game mechanics. They tend to be related to things that maybe are thematically related to the game, or they may be related to sort of people involved in making the game and such. But, it's fair to say that there's a fair amount of fluff. And even on YouTube, there's complaints about that that'll get every once in a while. So, I totally get why the pre-recorded video. Actually, it's also true that the pre-recorded video takes me less time, and I don't like talking about the money too much, but as a whole, I actually get paid a little bit better and spend less time on the pre-recorded videos, at least so far. But again, I'll admit, I love doing the live thing, and it is kind of nice to be able to have some back and forth with people's direct questions, although I do think a lot. One of the reasons why I watch the videos while they're playing is just so I can specifically see how people are reacting to them. But anyways, on the note of like side topics and all of that, it has been kind of funny to see a video which is actually laser focused on the game and how it's played, and I know for a fact that they were very, very happy with that video. It was exactly what they were looking for. But of course, contrast that with the audience response, and you sometimes just have to laugh. So in this case here, like, my responsibility in terms of the Twitch broadcast is definitely to make sure that I don't, if I don't feel that the digressions are adding a whole lot, to sort of re-steer them. But I also have a feeling that there are probably people in the chat who are interested in seeing your, your game journey. So please don't feel that that's a forbidden topic. Anyways, new project available. You are now able to undertake the Common Cause project. Cooldowns on improving relations between nations are reduced by 20% following diplomatic events we initiate, and increases the control point management capacity by 10. So that's a pretty good one for us, especially because it's expensive to try and raise our control points through stats. Now, there is one thing that I had been meaning to do for a while. So, covert operations, and we can turn to enemy counselors. I think we can afford to speed things up.
Nothing unusual found.
Now that's the first time I've actually seen a failure to one of those. So I failed to learn anything about Xenoform Alpha 5. Oh, hang on, that's also the first time I've ever tried to do an investigation like that. So we'll repeat that mission. It does put us behind in terms of restoring stability to Central America.
Violence is abating.
Okay, looking good in Guatemala. It's only a guerrilla war now. It is rising in Mexico, though.
Recon complete.
I've learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in Iran. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research going forward. Okay, so I think I'll take Gennardi to clear out, or to help with the unrest. We've more or less abandoned all of these regions, so this is really about dealing with the... Oh, that's not entirely true, actually. Panama. Portugal, under the control of the Protectorate, and Canada have entered their alliance. China, okay, yeah. I would love to take over China, but I don't have the resources for it. Non-sapient alien life forms have been detected in the Juba region in South Sudan, so that means
I'm here.
Is going to lead an assault on an alien asset. Let's bring that up to 90%.
Going in hot.
Ready for orders.
Okay, Andre is done protecting our interests, so as always the question is, what regions do we have more than 50% support in? Alright, time to win some hearts and minds.
We must persuade the people.
Toby's still going to continue to support the United States, and I think we'll just leave the rest. Oh, my bad. Before we do that, Andre needs to defend our interests in Mexico.
Making things safe for our people.
And our crackdown in Costa Rica has ended. So, one of the things that I want to try and do here is to see whether or not there are any nations outside of... so I basically need to recover 6 points. So Eritrea and Iceland together would account for about 4 and change. Nope, actually, so if we kill Botswana... Okay, so now I just need to get rid of 2. Iceland is actually probably... Okay, what's the specific number? Okay, we're actually slightly above. So, yeah, I am going to have to abandon Iceland after all. Alright.
Where do you need me?
So we're going to clear this out, but we are going to do the very important step of checking in on our science. Okay, so we're on October 1st, and let's take a look at where we are research-wise. So we are still pushing the agenda, or sorry, dominating the agenda. So we're at 2390. The next highest is the initiative, 2170. In position 2, we are at 993, and that's in contrast to Humanity First at 842. So they're coming up quite quickly behind me. Finally, arrival security, we've blown through with 386, and that is in contrast to Humanity First's 176. So Humanity First is the closest we have to an ally on these things. But what I do want to be focusing on here is how... So the delicate balance I'm trying to draw here is making sure that I continue to dominate the world research agenda, but that I continue to invest in council engineering projects. In fact, the real hope is that I put the minimum amount that I can into global research while still being able to maintain... see, we're actually being outdone on unity movements. So that's good for me to know. Okay. So essentially what I've got here, so under Unity movements, we generated 203 research compared to 224 for the initiative. And at that rate, they will overtake us. We've got a surplus of a little short of 60 points in militarization of space, and we are doing over twice as much in arrival security. So, here's what I'm going to try and figure out here. Sorry, this is going to involve a little bit of math, and I don't have it on the screen here, but I can say I can give up about half of the research that's going into arrival security. In terms of militarization of space, I can probably give up about 25% of that. In terms of unity movements, I need to push that up. So I mean, really, 10% will probably do it, but let's boost it by 20. And then the rest of that is going to go into council engineering projects. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do here. So the tricky part in terms of these numbers are that I know this is going to be augmented by Toby's work. So what I'm going to just do here is I'm going to take these fixed numbers here. So 15,667. Well, I said that I can afford to lose half of it, right? So in this case here, what I really want to be shooting for is about 7.8, all things being equal. And then in the case of, 10,444, similarly, we can sort of afford a 25% reduction, so similarly, we're looking at about 7.8 again. Finally, we want about a 20% boost in terms of the 10,444, so as a consequence, we're really looking for this to go to about 12.5, or thereabouts. And then, of course, the icing on the cake will be if I can work out that distribution while also still allowing augmented learning and augmented combat training to work out. So first thing I'm just going to do here is knock these things down a little bit, see how close I can get to this 7.8 ideal. We're actually darned close. All right, so the problem is I'm starving too much of my research here. Yeah, so then we turn you into 4s and 5s. You know, this is the closest that I can get to it. So again, I think I said that my ideal targets were... where'd my pencil go? Okay. So my ideals were 12.51 for unity movements, 7.8 for militarization of space and rival security, and then whatever remnant going into augmented combat training and augmented learning. Now, I prefer to have some research to none. And I think if I try to mess around with these numbers anymore, I'm going to wind up sort of impoverishing unity movements. But again, we'll see where all of this goes. If we still feel that we're behind the initiative, we can reevaluate. But I'm reasonably happy with where this is at right now. So we should have everybody locked into positions. We'll see if there's maybe any... Okay. So I don't think there's any advantage to boosting Toby's administration anymore. So the things that improve... So there's actually a couple of tricky questions here. The question would be... So administration, command, and persuasion are the major features. However, I do also want to consider the benefits that a country is going to get from certain traits. So I'm not going to put anything else into administration just because I think he's hit his cap in terms of the org capacity. So it's sort of wasted to give him more admin. So ops income by 1. Influence generation by 1. So science is obviously very tempting here, but I think I'm going to put the point into command, because again, that helps me with my cap here. So definitely more admin for the character that's got the space for it. Okay, and as always, the question is there a benefit to us buying any of these groups? I don't think we need any of the military-oriented ones. I mean, there are some nice things that they give us, but we are still short on cash, so I would actually prefer organizations that can generate some cash for us. I think we're just going to leave that be. Okay. Again, we're waiting for December when Havelock is ready to go. Also, Nexus General, I don't think I said hi to you, so hello. I also neglected to notice that there is more than one alien life forms.
I will help them.
Securing our control.
All right, so we've got North America under lock and key. I guess Gennardi's just going to go, head to South Sudan immediately after the attack. So again, we can head back to Central America and
Surveillance
bring
complete.
everything under control. All right, we have improved our knowledge about Xenoform Alpha 5. We know that we know the target's identity, Xenoform Alpha 5, affiliation with the aliens, and work as a Hydra. We also have a detailed profile of the counselor that is available in the intel section. We estimate the counselor has a loyalty score of 25. Oh, the alien doesn't have sympathies to the humans? Who would have guessed? And actually, we just barely
Wrapping up here.
pulled that off. So let's just take a quick look at what the profile looks like. Hard targets going to be in pain. So it's really neat to just see all of these. So gather some humans from the region to study how to improve the alien ability to control them. Spends ops. Enthrall public. Domesticate a portion of the human population in this mission. So it doesn't actually entirely... Okay, yeah, so these are about gaining control points. It gives us some ideas. I suppose this is the same information as what I could get inside of the codex, but still, interesting stuff to look at. I'm going to clear this out just so I can try and keep on top of the state of the world. I'll let you know, Nexus General, I was really thinking of doing Against the Storm today, but then I thought, no, because Nexus General has been so patient
Things are stabilizing.
with me on... Oh man, is that another one? I consciously said we are sticking with... I know I've said this a couple of times, but we're consciously sticking with Terra Invicta. I wind up redoing that choice over and over again just because Friday I keep kicking back Against the Storm. We're now able to undertake the regulatory capture project. Influence cost of direct investment is reduced by 25%. I'm trying to think what a direct investment does, though.
Target destroyed.
Our assault on the alien life forms in the Tripoli region was successful. We estimate we reduced the alien flora and fauna in this region by 55%, but it's likely that some remains. Ooh, yeah, there's lots of stuff for our people to blow up. We've lost the aristocracy point in Nigeria. So if I can, I'll try and take that, but it's not a high priority right now. Okay, always happy to see new orgs. And we have to make some choices about where we're pulling our influence. If I can, I'd like to keep as many of the Central American sites under my control as possible. So there's lots of things to do. Let's say... Let's take a look at those organizations first. My 5, eh? So it seems to me that most of these will cost us money rather than gain us money, so I'm going to leave those aside. Next up, we are going
Standing
to
by for orders.
destroy alien life forms.
Taking it to them.
What's the op?
Your orders.
Not looking good. I don't think I can really afford Toby for
I'm
that,
here.
though.
Standing by.
Where to?
Yeah, so unfortunately we're gonna have to wait before taking on the next one.
Reporting in.
Okay.
Acknowledged.
I think we'll get Amvi to
Removing our
claim the
enemies.
security apparatus.
I'm here.
Andre, in the meantime, we can assign to winning hearts and minds.
I will try to sway the public.
Okay. Now, this is kind of like what I needed to do before, but I am going to... I'm going to have to, again, take some time to work this out, because basically I haven't really properly sat down and worked out exactly what I need to sort of keep control over North and now Central America. And there's some really clear places that I can sort of afford to leave out. I'm just not entirely sure I have quite enough. So I'm going to get the exact number because I want to be precise here. So we've got 304, 6224. Our cap is 286. So what we need to do is get rid of 18.6224. And the priority should be to get rid of locations that are not in Central America, for instance. So, for instance, one question I have here is if we drop the Caribbean states, and it says here that we've got the cost against the cap, so this is 677 each, or like whether it's 677 each or for both of these. I actually don't mind giving up the Caribbean states because that gets me the 12 potentially. They're nice to have, like, don't get me wrong. They do have a high servants total. Where else were we? Specific states I would be willing. Okay, so let's actually say that the center of this is going to be to give up the Caribbean states. Okay, so we're down to 291. I just want to double check how that... Yeah, so we're only 5 above now, so it is per control point, which is kind of what we were expecting. Alright, this is where I have to make the hard decisions. So we've got 187 for free by getting rid of Eritrea. Oh yeah, the Pacific states are an obvious one. Actually, that... Okay, so we've got... Yep, those two are sufficient. Ah. It feels very natural to click on the nation's name to go directly to it. Yeah, there we go. So this is getting a bit closer to... this is getting a little bit closer to what I think the final form should look like. So there are still a couple of places that we're leaving out. So for instance, El Salvador is currently abandoned. Naturally, we abandoned the Caribbean states, and we don't have Cuba. We also are not likely to have Cuba for a long time. But of course, once we start gobbling up other nations, we will we'll get a handle on this. Whether we expand out to South America or we make a shot for China, I don't know. But there's a lot that's going to change in between then. So I also don't think there's a whole lot for me to think about in that regard. And again, part of this is just a chance for us to experiment with different approaches. I did lock myself into the North American strategy because that was how we started the playthrough originally, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna feel beholden to every last strategy that I did in that last one, because it doesn't make sense. Like, especially if you want to learn a game, it doesn't make sense to keep doing the same thing over and over again if you already understand them well, at those points well. Within reason, like obviously you want to do sensible things too. Again, I apologize for how tedious it is for me to constantly be writing down the science values, but I'm still trying to find a decent equilibrium for all this. So 26,444, we're taking that off of 2390, so that's 254. That should outdo our rivals. Oh man, they pulled right back. So the initiatives basically realize that there's no hope of overtaking us now. It's got 1162 compared to 993, so we put 169, which again, we were trying to outdo 146. If we look at... Yeah, so our rivals are putting in 145. And we've got 555 compared to that 386, so we're down from 304 to 169, which again is higher than the 147 that was being invested previously. So yeah, they're putting in 145 again as well. So, the one lesson I'm getting out of this, so it's okay to be around the 8 level, but I think we can roll back a bit on Unity movements. What happens if I put some more into augmented learning? Looking good. Now, I don't want to pull too much away from Unity movements because this is actually a big tech for me, so I do want there to be some meaningful progress. But in this case here, given that the initiative has given up hope, I do want to make sure that my council engineering is getting some love. Okay, I think we're ready to confirm the assignments. We already took a look at the org marketplace. And what else do we have here? So the Academy's begun a new orbital platform. I do think I should be putting a little bit more into orbital platforms just because the military-based ones can give us some bonuses on the world. One thing that I probably don't do very well in the decision making of this game is that, like, you're necessarily constrained. Like, there's only so many technology slots, right? So while there's a big complicated tree for you to navigate in this game, but there's a limit to the number of things that you can do inside of the game. So you do want to have some long-term thinking, but you can actually afford to sort of set aside, like, you can sort of afford to defer some decisions just because you can't do everything all at once. Alright, so augmented combat training, we've completed the augmented combat training project. National investment points we direct to the military priority are increased by 5%, as with build army and build navy. So, oh my god, there is so much to do here. So, I do want the 6th counselor, but I don't believe have the covert operations project yet. The restored Warsaw Pact. So regulatory capture, no. Publicize alien threat is tempting. I'm just not sure when I'm going to do it. Patrol vessels is also tempting because we are eventually going to want to build the ships. Common Cause helps us out with our control point capacity. It also costs the same as patrol vessels. Oh my goodness, there's so much that I want. I'm going to invest in the ships because this really is something that I have been working towards. So Project Exodus is pushing
Public
up to
opinion
Mars.
is moving in our direction.
That's good. We'll permanently assign to Nicaragua.
Order is returning.
Okay, liking what I'm seeing there. We are now able to undertake the magazine project. Allows the construction of the following ship components. Magazine. You gotta keep entertained while you're up there, right?
Score 1 for the good guys.
Excellent. So rolled a 57 on that. Our assault on the alien life forms in the Juba region was successful. We estimate we reduced alien flora and fauna in this region by 78%, but it's likely some remains.
Cleaning things up.
So we'll move into Sudan afterwards, and then hopefully we'll be able to reapply Gennady towards clearing out the riffraff. All right, so we've lost Nigeria completely. We still have someone.
Our people have taken control.
So we succeeded in reclaiming. Whether or not this is a good use of my assets is another question, but... Okay, Turkey under control of the servants, and the United States have ended their alliance, along with... Wow, that's a couple of... some long-standing alliances breaking apart thanks to the alien threat.
Heading to the LZ.
Okay.
Ready for my mission.
What's the chance of claiming this from... Yeah. Not very good. Alright, we'll see if we can incorporate El Salvador, but I think I'm going to have to say goodbye to them. Okay, so I don't see a whole lot of point in spending this effort to gain the aristocracy when we're not really going to make anything of it. So, it would seem to me that we want to investigate any unknown counselors.
Eyes on target.
So I'd love to have them working on, working on stability and such, but I do want some knowledge on the enemy if I can. I'm assuming that this is kind of a permanent thing anyway, right? Like once you know about counselor, there's just going to be fewer unknowns on the board. Now again, I got to make a decision. Like, at what point do I intervene in Mexico? Because Guatemala's still having a lot of trouble. I wonder if we are well served with this investment in the military relative to knowledge. I don't know, I'm gonna hold the line here, I think, but it doesn't feel right. I do need to get a little bit better at the nation management because I don't really think it's supposed to be one size fits all. I think you are supposed to treat your I think you're probably supposed to treat developing and developed nations. I'm not going to lie, Nexus General, I'm very reluctant to answer that question because you know I don't like being told how to play the game, and that's already happened in this chat. So I'm going to keep my counsel on that. All right, let's take a look at... I think the sad reality is we're going to have to give up something here. So we need 3.2541. Yeah, there's nothing for me. There's nothing else for me to give up. So I think, and Belize on its own isn't enough of a sacrifice. So El Salvador just happens to be the one that's right for the price. It's a shame, but you know. Okay. This shouldn't require the regular check-ins that I've been doing at this point, but let's just verify that I found the numbers that I want. The thing that I'm worried about is that the initiative, seeing that I'm investing less into Unity movements, Unity movements, may have adjusted their own investment. $180. Oh no, that sounds right. Okay, and the initiative's basically abandoned this project, so looking good overall. I mean, it's not surprising because we're only a couple hundred points away from completing it. So we're putting 179 into militarization of space now. Contrast, Humanity First is putting 157, so we definitely want to keep investing there. Like, there's a 10% difference, but the adjustments are so coarse that I suspect I'm going to see a bigger than 10% change. We'll experiment with it, but I have a feeling that whatever adjustment I make is going to be less than 10%. Or, sorry, greater than 10%. So we compare that with 478. Yeah, so Humanity First is investing pretty aggressively still. So if I were to improve patrol vessels, where you go from 8005 to, you know what, that is actually the 10%. I'm gonna give it a shot. Because again, if I can reinvest in council engineering the ideal was to maximize investment in council engineering while still controlling the global research agenda. Okay. More docking maneuvers. I really do need to be assigning more people to stability. I have a feeling once we try and integrate North America, that's going to just cause an overall increase in instability because we're taking... You know, we've got the United States sort of under control, but we're incorporating it with some basket cases. I think that's all going to add up. Mind you, it'll also mean that there's a single target that I'm trying to bring the unrest down for, so I suppose it'll balance itself out. And it doesn't look like there's anything for me to do organization-wise, so we will lock it in.
Offering assistance.
And we're a month away from Havelock Base becoming useful, at which point we will build a dock module and advance on our mission.
Person of interest surveilled.
We've learned significant new information about Barilali Lawani. We know the target's identity. their affiliation with the Academy, and their work as an inspector. We have a detailed profile of the counselor that is available in the intel section. We're not going to try and turn anyone quite yet, but... although we should take a look to see whether or not any of our own
Things
people
are
have
cooling
been turned.
off.
Maybe we'll do that at the end when there's nobody unknown. Spaceflight program initiated. Nigeria has joined the list of spacefaring nations by launching a small satellite to orbit. Factions may begin building boost and mission control there. I mean,
Targets secured.
I suppose as we might expect from Project Exodus. So we've succeeded in stamping out the aliens. This hopefully means Gennardi can be put towards stability again. We'll maybe start her off in Mexico and then move down to the other regions. And Nicaragua, we are slowly making progress. Okay, it says there are new organizations. Let's see if that's true. Crux Security costs us money. The rest is... I mean, again, it's all interesting, right? It's all stuff that in principle I could make use of. So, like, another good example of this would be by buying Second Chance... Oh, hang on. It doesn't actually seem to indicate a command increase. So definitely Crux Security. Like, the things that boost command obviously improves my control cap as well. I just haven't been that aggressive in terms of pursuing pursuing the command, just because I don't use it as much. Alright, so Amvi's gonna go looking for people to investigate.
Investigating
people
target.
in my territory.
Ready to go.
Unless it's Hein Belize commander, we may want to consider a stabilized mission there. I know! We're going to focus on Mexico
We'll restore
first.
peace to this nation.
And as usual, I am going to do a check-in on my science efforts. I'm trying to think how science could be improved so that I don't need to do these calculations by hand. Because the thing is that if you just state the given number, that's true at the time that you're assigning priorities, but the AI can choose to reassign those priorities wherever they want. So the initiative's not doing anything. Militarization of space, we're at 1491. 1291. So it's just the back two that I'm most interested in. We're at 884 compared to their 625. Okay, so we're still putting 150 in, which means we're probably behind Humanity First. Nope, they did 147. So I got very lucky there. Unfortunately, that does mean I'm going to check in on it next turn just to make sure that it wasn't a fluke. So, like, one way I could imagine this working is if you get, like, a plot of the change in research between the two periods, and you could sort of look at a graph. But again, if you choose to change it partway through, the graph is not going to be as informative as the way I'm using it. So, I think probably the way that it exists is okay now.
I will
I'm
help them.
just a little neurotic in terms of the way that I play. So the first part of Havelock should be going online next turn, and then the last part should be coming online.
We've got some intel on
2
our
or 3
target.
turns from now. Alright, so we just found an initiative character who was messing around in the States. Or sorry, in Canada.
Things are cooling off.
I'm gonna make that a permanent assignment until the subversion's gone.
We've moved the needle.
Violence is abating.
Okay, we hit 50% in Nicaragua. We'll maybe make the standard 50% plus 1. Or greater than 50%. We're able to undertake the maximum effort project, increases the maximum amount of resources you can spend to increase a mission success chance. That sounds very cool, although in practice, even influence at this point, I probably wouldn't actually be throwing that much. So I've got large stockpiles, but alright, fair enough. It looks like Exodus is actually making a meaningful play. Yemen, that was unexpected. So that's going to be something for my judge to investigate. I will ignore that advice from Amvi.
Where do you need me? Investigating
So we'll start by
alien site.
investigating. The rest, I think we're just going to leave as is. We want Mexico to get worked on. Obviously, Guatemala is still in trouble. Nothing really to worry about in terms of Canada and the United States. And obviously, I want to continue the advice to the United States. Index Gnome, good to see you. How you doing? Okay, so December 1st. I would expect that, yeah, the initiative didn't invest anything, so I'm not going to worry too much about recording that. We're at 1641 compared to 1433, and then 1034 to their 781. And I would expect that we're somewhere around us doing 150 and them doing 147 like last time, but because the margin is so thin now, I want to make sure that we are actually delivering. Yeah, so they're 142. So it's a little hair-raising, but in this case we've now got sort of 2 periods in which we've been able to deliver on our plan. So we've maximized the investment that's going into council engineering projects, and we've made sure that we are putting more research. Oh, nope. Regrettably, Humanity First has put 156 into arrival security. So, I'm gonna have to pull back on patrol. Well, yeah, I'll pull back on patrol vessels for a bit. I realize that is aligned with my main goal, but until I have the dock, it doesn't really matter. I'll also take a minute at some point and figure out what I need. Maybe when we go to the global research screen, we'll see what it takes to get the clandestine operation
Offering
so I can
support.
have another counselor running around. I don't know what that sound meant. Oh, there we go. We've completed the construction of the fission pile and the Havelock base on Olympus Mons, and that will that'll be followed up by the mining operations shortly afterwards.
Order is returning.
Order is returning.
Okay.
Recon complete.
I've learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in Yemen. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research going forward. So we may try and reclaim Yemen. We may just move into investigation again. Feels like an easy target to reclaim from the servants if they just wound up dropping it. 65% chance? I actually don't like that number. So let's investigate a counselor instead.
Surveilling target.
Okay, new orgs, always worth a look. Yes to money. So we'll buy Marigold Industries purely for the return. Actually, guess it doesn't really matter which one it goes on to. As you can see, that's a nice boost to our monthly income. Chaoshu should have, yeah, we'll give an increase to administration. So of course this does open up the possibilities of other acquisitions, right? I mean, it's very hard to argue with the CIA, especially for its admin bonus, but how on earth am I going to be able to afford the 400 cost to maintain it? All right. What's going on in the EU? A control point in the United States. Wait, what?
What's the op?
I thought we just did this.
Securing our interests.
Definitely we need to hang on to the US. Looks like
Ready to go.
MV has to... Oh no, that's... Yeah, MV completing that mission. So at the end of next month, we should be ready to go with our mining operations. And again, I apologize, but I am checking in on my science because we were behind Humanity First, so it is good to double check. So position 1 I'm not going to record, or well, I'll record, but I don't need to calculate because as long as the initiative's at 2204, it means they're not continuing to invest in it. The other thing I need to remember about this situation is I am going to need to invest heavily in the initial stages, and it looks like militarization of space and Unity movements are going to basically go live at roughly the same time. Now I want Unity movements to... I actually want Unity movement to progress because that's sort of central to our strategy. And I can't afford to pull back on militarization of space because if I do that, then Humanity First scoops me. So it's just going to be miserable for a little while, and we'll probably underinvest inside of Council Engineering. But, I mean, that's the price I pay for controlling the global research agenda. It is actually one thing that I am going to have to sort of think about after this playthrough is done, because it would seem to me that the ability to do the Council research projects, in principle... Oh, actually, Humanity First is investing nothing in militarization of space now. So they've gone all in on arrival security. Probably smart move for them. Yeah, so they're in 212. So let's pull back on militarization of space. That also staggers the discoveries between the two. So we were at 167. They were at 212. So I suspect this is actually not going to be enough to get us out of the woods, arrival security-wise, but I do have a bit of a head start on them, so I'm going to be able to refine this over time. So this is the thing, right? Like, I do wind up apologizing a lot for this style of recording the information in terms of science, but there is a reason I do it.
Securing our control.
And it's to catch stuff like that.
I have
on
new
China.
information.
All right, we've improved our knowledge about Hananjia, their identity, their affiliation with the initiative. Now, I thought that this was someone we already knew about. I'm actually going to take a quick second here on the intel screen. Okay, so I've probably been wasting my time. So it seems like they just go back to unknown afterwards, so there's probably just going to be this infinite stream of unknown agents. And there's other things I could have been doing with Amvi this whole time. Let's see what happens when the turn rolls over. Zambidextrous, you are not smart enough to understand this
Things
game.
are stabilizing.
First of all, great to see you again. I should mention...
Things are stabilizing.
Zambidextrous is somebody I found through playing Phantom Brigade. I actually haven't seen you online since I followed, but then I also think I wound up hosting you quite late, so that's more on me. But yeah, no, Terra Invicta is definitely a very involved strategy game. I love it, and I mean, it's one of these things where... Thank you, Allgrins. Yeah, so, I mean, this is going to get a little meta, but we are sort of waiting for... There we go. We've completed the HAB module. So we've got a few things that happened this turn. This is a turn we've actually been waiting for a while. But this does actually relate. I always feel a little bad when I get meta on some of this, but it is actually worth talking about why I find Hooded Horse interesting as a publisher, and more importantly, sort of something I like about independent gaming as a whole, right? If you think about the ideal of independent gaming, it's a little bit like liking independent films. You want to see those stories because they are very focused. They're maybe not necessarily the types of stories that would be... large or appealing enough to a wide audience to, to sort of justify a multi-million-dollar budget. But it's fair to say, right, that, like for people who like really hard science fiction, this is a pretty old movie now, but there's this movie called Primer, and I'm pretty sure, I get the feeling there's probably a few people in this chat who've watched Primer. Now, Primer is borderline incomprehensible at parts because the characters who sort of play these engineers speak to each other as like engineers who have a common understanding of this weird stuff that they're doing. And it's a time travel story. And, again, the people talk to each other like they understand this technology that they've built, and that, they don't have the exposition lines. They don't say, oh, you mean you put the flange beside the Sprill and that's what allowed us to time travel? No, I mean, they're figuring out what's happening to them. And I mean, obviously the story's told, well, maybe not obviously if you haven't seen, but the story is sort of told in this non-linear way, so you kind of have to figure that out as well. But, like, there are people who are fanatics for Primer, and I actually think it's a very good film. So, I'm probably one of them. But it would be very fair to say that if, like, 20th Century Fox were to give this thing a $100 million budget, what they have effectively done is made a $100 million grant to the people who made that film, right? There is no possible way that they're going to see that kind of a return. But that movie was made for something like $7,000. Like, their shooting ratio of, like, motion picture film used to stuff that wound up in the final cut is about as close to 1-to-1 as I think is possible. And I mean, they did little things like, used a still camera to sort of figure out all the shots ahead of time, and it's again just one of these things you'll usually hear about independent films of like, writer, director, composer, lead actor, just like everything that the kind of principal creative could do conceivably they did on that show. And again, just I'm focusing on science fiction because that's what Terra Invicta is, but around a similar time, I think this movie is a bit earlier than Primer, Darren Aronofsky's first feature, Pi. Now Darren Aronofsky's obviously gone on to do larger projects like The Whale and Black Swan, and a pretty successful film career by any standard. Maybe not a huge mainstream one, by maybe comparing it to the sort of stuff you'd see for Marvel. But again, Pi is black and white, and it's all about this mathematician and Kabbalah, and I think actually I'd argue that that's probably a bit more of a wider appeal kind of a story. It's got some like thriller elements to it. But again, it's a very tightly focused story. It's very clear what its interests are, and the amount of sort of financial capital put into that movie is considerably smaller than what you would see inside something that has mass appeal. So in principle, I mean, this stuff was made before there was widespread internet streaming for films, but presumably this is the sort of stuff that maybe you would see like a Kickstarter for, or you could imagine that this is more about finding the other group of nerds who are really interested in the things that you're interested in, for this particular story or project. So what does this have to do with gaming? We're in this wonderful point in terms of gaming now where the costs of developing games have gone down considerably. And this isn't even like news anymore. This is easily a decade or more old, right? In fact, you're spoiled for choice in terms of effectively free tools for gaming. Like off the top of your head, in terms of popular things that you would have more people than you could conceivably keep in touch with to give you advice on. Alone, you've got Unreal, Unity, and Godot. And then if you want to get into the fancy stuff, you've got Ogre for specifically graphics, and then you'd have to bring in, all the sound and the physics stuff. Or, you could use Torque because you want to be fancy, or you really liked Frozen Synapse. Again, you're spoiled for choice in terms of the tools to be able to make games. Likewise, it's just easier to program now. In fact, a lot of these tools have visual scripting languages, so you have sort of these no-code options or at least low-code options to be able to sort of realize a vision as well. In fact, for those of you who like following this stuff, I noticed that Jordan Weissman, the company he's currently attached to, is very much about a tool designed to design narrative experiences without code, which I think is very interesting. I couldn't get a lot of information about it on its website, but this is someone who, he founded FASA, so this is, one of the people responsible for Shadowrun and BattleTech and Earth Dawn, and then of course founded Harebrained Schemes and was, lead of Microsoft Gaming for a while, and somebody who was in early on alternate reality games with 42 Entertainment. This really accomplished guy is working on these tools to be able to realize stories without necessarily having to be a programmer. So all of this stuff is very exciting, but of course the challenge is that it's also created a situation where people who are wanting to make games are finding it difficult to be able to get the kind of return that will allow them to, so we'll see pure AI created games. And I know there's a lot of people with very strong opinions on that future. But yeah, like actually, I think one company that's doing interesting stuff with AI tools for games, and like not the widely available ones, they're effectively creating their own tools, but Embark Studios, taking a look at what they're doing with Arc Raiders and how the animation is working, I think is really neat stuff. Because they haven't gotten rid of animators. What they've done, though, is they're using the animators to sort of calibrate and tune the models. But There's also some videos on that for those of you that are interested in that stuff. But so and again, this is really unpacking what Sambidextrous has said here. But the thing that I really like about this is that, in my opinion at least, one of the viable options that people have is to be sort of unabashedly dedicated towards a particular thing for which there is a given audience. This sounds like common sense, right? But it's really not. Like, if you think about the number of independent games that you look at that you can say honestly fit this description, it's smaller than you might think. So what I mean by this is that Terra Invicta is a grand strategy game, science fiction grand strategy game, from a team that is known for Long War, for XCOM and 1 and 2. Now, Long War is not exactly known for its simplicity, right? In some ways, it's actually kind of the opposite of what the Firaxis XCOM is. Firaxis XCOM is this tremendous simplification of this wonderful old game, which was very complicated and clearly has got a very dedicated fan base. And in the case of Long War, there's a lot of new stuff that was added into that game. I've actually never played Long War, I have to admit, but I see a lot of people, and a lot of people recommend it, so I feel safe enough saying this stuff. So, being able to make something like Terra Invicta, which again is a very complicated game with lots of systems, and of course that partnership with Hooded Horse, which is clearly dedicated towards sort of interesting sort of strategy and RPG experiences. Well, what is common between, RPGs and these deeper strategy games? Lots of numbers, lots of, systems and things to mess around with in a spreadsheet. And if you take a look at some of the other games, right, you've got Old World and you've got Clanfolk. And as it is, it turns out that so far, all of the Hooded Horse games that have been released have actually met with financial success. At least that was the impression I got from an interview that I saw. That so far they've made sort of this minimum marketing commitment to all of their games, and so far they have, they've made more money than they've spent on the games, or they're projected to, at least. Again, this is coming from Hooded Horse and their sort of press tour, right? So it's a really amazing accomplishment. But if you think of it too, what are some of the other indie games that we like here? Phantom Brigade, Industries of Titan, like the Brace Yourself games. Now this company is a lot more focused on making sort of hooky games, ones that you'll tell your friends about. Much more simpler to play, much more easy to describe in a single sentence. And then the other example I'd hold up for this would be Cultist Simulator, which, it's created effectively a genre itself. There really is no other game like it. There are actually a couple of games that have been inspired by it, and they really seem to sort of lift this like card interaction system. But the thing is that the card interaction system is not what makes that game interesting. It's that combined with the overall sort of story that it's telling. And so, with no intended disrespect to that game that is doing it, I would argue that game actually could stand to maybe try and be a little bit more original on its own. So again, this is my really long way of unpacking what Sambidextrous was saying. But like in this case here, one of the things I really like about Terra Invicta is how unabashedly complex it is. Now, it does sort of, I kind of run into the buzzsaw with that a couple of times, because I wound up misunderstanding how some things work, or I have to kind of go through and try and work out how the numbers all work out. But this is one of these wonderful experiences where, again, if you want to sort of imagine, again, like I said, I think there is this implicit theme in this game in terms of humanity learning to do big things again, but not taking it for granted that humanity automatically rises up as one, like in XCOM, but rather actually has to work out for itself in terms of what the future looks like. And using the tools of geopolitics as well as your individual influence of your different counselors and such. I think that's a really, really interesting game, and it's one that hasn't necessarily been done quite in this way. You've got grand strategy in some cases. You've got and you've got the mega game. What was it? Watch the Skies. People were talking about. But as far as a game is concerned, it hasn't quite done it. But it does carry with it the risk, right, that you potentially buck some of the people who might otherwise be interested in the subject. Anyways, So sorry about that. But I will say, like, if anybody, I've tried where I can to sort of talk, maybe not about the individual minutiae of my decisions on this, but if anybody kind of wants an idea in terms of the long-term strategy or that, I'm happy to try and unpack it, because it's a game that definitely does reward some long-term thinking. Anyways, we did have our big milestone here, so we completed the construction of a new outpost mining complex at the Havelock base in Olympus Mons, Mars. So this thing is basically just going to be sitting and doing its thing for the next little while. So if I take a look at its stats, it's currently generating a surplus of one power. So if I want, I could build another fission pile, and then the question would be, what am I building it towards, right? We could actually take a look at this. So we've got the energy lab for high energy physics experiments, information science lab, life science, materials lab. Space dock on Mars is an interesting idea. Supply depot? What does that get me? A place for our ships to take on propellant, munitions, and supplies. Yeah, that's not quite it. So yeah, I can see some sense in putting some labs on Mars. The question is, does it make sense? Like, is this the sort of thing that I would like to use Mars for? Is there something else that I can maybe do? One way or the other, I would, like, there's nothing here that will, only take one power. So anything that I build is going to need... Anything I build is either going to need solar collectors or a fission pile, and the fission pile is the better of the two. So I could see a fission pile and then one research and then move on. But honestly, we'll just leave this. I'm happy enough pulling resources out of the ground. But the reason this is a milestone for us is we're now generating a surplus in terms of all of our resources here, which means we can start thinking about the space dock, and that's going to be for our current station. So, one thing I might want to do with the space dock, right now we've got, what is it? So currently we're generating 5 power. I mean, there's some maintenance costs here, but we're clearly in a surplus. So what I probably want to do here, we'd probably put down a solar collector, so that'll get me 10 power. The reason why I want this over the fission pile is if you look at it, right, you've got cash, a little bit of water, and volatiles. Compare that with the fission pile, it's just so much more expensive for the same amount of energy. Let me know if you do Sambidextrous. I would love to see how it turns out, because like one of the things for me, like I learned this game as I go. I'm still playing the tutorial even though this game's been out for a while. Now part of that's just because I had to reset because I upgraded my computer, and I sort of jumped between titles. I went off onto Old World for a bit. But I'm not gonna lie, this is, in my opinion, a very rewarding game. I think it's like, it's got both an interesting theme, and as long as you're willing to sort of ride the bucking bronco, I think it's worth the effort. The catch is, though, is that's easy for me to say as someone who loves these big nerdy strategy games, and to someone who doesn't necessarily like games like that, I would feel very bad if I sort of made them, run off and play something like that. Okay, so one thing I'm just noting here, right? We do need some time for our. You totally bought Terra Invicta because of me, but you'll still probably not play it. You like seeing people who understand play it, though, so I figured I'd support some. I'm happy to hear that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Allgrins, like, I feel like people should buy, like, the reason to buy a game is because you want to play the game, right? I love that people support developers that I like, but I mean, in the end, like, the reason why people should be supporting the developers that I like is because I like the games that they make. And, I'm sure Pavonis will make something that's not Terra Invicta that's also really rewarding, and I'm sure Hooded Horse has already got games out that that other people will enjoy. But I appreciate it still. Obviously, it's your money. It's up to what you do. But the other thing too is that I do strongly believe, I say this about Civilization all the time, but I also think people should have a little bit more faith in themselves in terms of whether or not they can handle difficult games. Like, there are people I know who consider Civilization to be the most complicated game that they'll ever play in their lives, and they simply just cannot conceive of a game even more complicated than that. That, like, it's like only smart people play Civ is kind of the feeling. And yet I know so many strategy gamers who kind of consider Civ to be table stakes. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like, I think Civ does a really good job of telling you how to play it, and I think it tries to be as approachable as it can. But the fact of the matter is that that game still has quite a few systems. I mean, that's why 4X is 4X. But the thing is, where I was actually intending to go in terms of the focus group is that if you look at a company called Matrix Games, they're a step even further in terms of complexity. So these are games that, and first of all, Matrix sells some of its stuff to sort of like military colleges. So like Command Modern Operations is a simulator that is used for like proper wargaming, in addition to the type of wargaming I do, where I just get to pretend that I'm a general, for a couple of hours. But even once they go outside of that, like, so an interesting game would be Shadow Empires, and like they have these very, very difficult UIs. They're actually the reason why I don't play them more. They're these beautifully complicated games. Shadow Empires is particularly interesting because so much of it is procedurally generated, but the interfaces are very difficult, and so you need to spend a lot of time reading these manuals of a couple hundred pages. And the thing is that, especially for people who played games like that in the old days, right? Like, they're transitioning from pen and paper or like boxed war games and moving into gaming. Like, they're used to reading long and complicated manuals, and they like going into all of those details. And so, here you've got Slytherin Games makes great Warhammer 40k strategy games, like ones that are not necessarily that complicated to get into. But there's also the Matrix division, and that's obviously something that is not intended to be mass appeal. And again, it'd be wonderful if it was, but that's also just a fantastically complicated way of making things work. And obviously, like, Slytherin's a going concern. They're soliciting, proposals from people, and so we're lucky enough that there's enough people who are interested in like weird and complicated things that we get our options. But I will admit, like, I kind of like the Hooded Horse approach, because it seems to be that they're bringing in games with a sufficient level of depth that, but still have sort of this nice interface in front of them to make it, visually appealing and just kind of nice to interact with. So, anyways, there's my sales pitch for the developer and the publisher behind this stuff. So, the plan here, I can avoid the cost in terms of boost and cash by using my space resources. The catch is that I need some time to build them up. So the plan here is going to be, we'll start with the solar panels first, or solar collector. So that's 0.311 and 0.75. So we should have that basically within a month. And then we'll save up for a little bit and get the space dock. And of course, by then our research should have leveled out. Now, let's get on to taking the turn we were going to. So first of all, I need to recover a couple of points of admin. So one thing I do actually want to figure out, I want to see if I can boost anyone's admin so that we can maybe. We're so darn close. Not enough to get the FBI, but... Oh, that's good to hear, Algorins, yeah. I don't know, like, this is the big thing. Like, I don't know if I always do a good job of this, but, like, you know, hopefully the Phantom Brigade... Like, I focused a bit on, like, the negatives on the Phantom Brigade video on the Steam page. It's still up, incidentally, for those of you that haven't seen it. But, like, I have focused on the negative on it, but to be completely honest with you, I actually really appreciate the number of people who've come into that and have said that it's a very helpful guide. And that was obviously what Brace Yourself said about it. So, to me, like, that was the thing that mattered the most about it. And for me, oh, we've got aliens to deal with. So I'm gonna leave the I'm gonna leave my cap aside for a bit because we need to blow up some aliens.
Gear up.
They're in our backyard.
I'm here.
So we're gonna dedicate AMV towards stabilizing Mexico now.
We'll turn down the heat.
At your service.
But yeah, no, I think one of the things that's been most consistent for me playing this stuff on stream, at least, is to hopefully give people an indication that, like, yes, these games are complex, but they're not like impossible to understand. That you do actually have a fighting chance of sort of being able to play and enjoy this sort of stuff. And that could be true for anything from Civilization to, like, Terra Invicta, which is probably one of the most complicated games that I've played consistently on stream. Now, whether or not people find it's a good use of their time, that is another question. Like, just like I wouldn't necessarily watch certain movies, or find it worthwhile to spend that time watching those movies. I think I am going to have to kill Jordan just because I don't want to give up any of the other... Yeah, it's a shame, but I'm going to have to do it. So this is just to bring my control cap down. Now we've overcorrected, but that'll just mean that there's more stuff for me to incorporate in the future. But yeah, as much as I can, try and document the process of me learning a new game like this, and then hopefully it will give people enough of an idea as to, number one, why it's interesting. So this is why we talk about some of the econ or the political aspects or the story aspects of certain games. And then following that, hopefully people will have a, one, they'll know why it's interesting, and then number two, they'll maybe feel a bit more confident in their ability to just sort of go in and make some mistakes and understand that, it's not necessarily always about winning, that it's possible to, it's actually possible to enjoy these games and just get completely demolished by the AI, because that's just an opportunity for you to sort of pick it up and learn again. Now, we're on January 1st. So I was talking about some big changes in terms of our strategy as a result of this, but I do need to check in on my research efforts first. Okay, so Humanity First has given up on the militarization of space, which is good. 1402 for arrival security. They're at 1246. So we were worried that they may be... Yeah, I noticed that. I was actually a little wary to talk about other streamers covering it, because I'd sort of said at the start, like, it's really cool to have a full release of a game that you really love, because then you get to sort of see the whole world, like, get into it and and support it. But obviously it's a little bit mixed, because of course then you're used to sort of having an entire category to yourself, and then all of a sudden you're sharing the category with a whole bunch of other really big, really popular streamers. But the thing is that broadcasters are not entitled to a category. Like, it's kind of like getting mad that people are suddenly into a movie you enjoyed. That's totally not the way to look at it. I think what I'm going to do here, I still have 1,200. So we're getting 201 compared to Humanity First 253, so we need another 50 points. I'm going to see if rolling back on augmented learning can help us keep ahead on arrival security. But this is going to get really complicated soon because Unity Movements is about to finish. And I don't want to put that off. But yeah, no, it's wonderful, especially because it's really clear that Phantom Brigade is a financial success. So hopefully that means that the project will get sort of reinvested in. But number two, that it will hopefully show all the other people who've had turn-based strategy games in mind that it is actually, it's viable, that you can make these kinds of projects and it's not just for strategy nerds, that there is actually a way to make these in such a way that that it can get a more mainstream appeal. So yeah, no, I'm totally fine with so the thing is, Algrin's, like, if I sit down with saying, oh god, how dare you mention other streamers, like, who am I kidding, right? Am I going to pretend that other streamers don't exist? But more importantly, like, it's a what goes around comes around thing, right? Like, I'm small enough that I benefit from people looking at weird and unusual things.
I would never want
Lexicon 2020, thank you very much for that follow. It's better to enable people to talk about other streamers, because in the end,
people will come to our side.
That will only ever be the way that people find out about me, right? Like, I know you came to this channel through Takri. There's limits to that, right? Like, if somebody's coming in and saying, like, oh, why are you watching this jackass, Perun AU is an example of somebody who really came out in very strong support for Terra Invicta and did this, from what I understand, really great guide for the game. So, if somebody's coming in saying, why are you watching this jackass, Perun AU is streaming, I'm not going to feel good about that. And it's not even because I don't like that streamer, right? I'll admit I haven't really watched their stuff. But obviously a meaningful and large figure in terms of the Terra Invicta community. But that's going to be more about the fact that, like, it's someone it's someone essentially being disruptive in my own broadcast. That's more of a politeness problem rather than the mention of another broadcaster. But yeah, being able to say, hey, if you're having trouble understanding the game, check out Perun AU's video. That's great, because obviously if I'm not doing a good job of explaining things going on, it is better to have people understand what's going on, because in the end that's going to potentially make the broadcast more accessible to other people. Although personally I like questions, because that gives me an idea in terms of where I'm falling back. That's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, I remember having to struggle with that in the alpha version, so there's a reason why I made some of those videos. All right, I've increased popular support for the resistance in Costa Rica. Our public support has changed by 11%, and it now stands at 54%. So because that was a critical success, we're actually going to move on to the next, or eventually we'll move on to the next region. Again, the aim here has been to get all of the North and Central American regions above 50%. So that's going to mean we're going to hit the Caribbean states and then Cuba.
Order
eventually.
is returning.
And we will make that a permanent assignment to Mexico for now.
Things are cooling off.
So nice big stockpile of resources here. I can actually probably
By the numbers.
I could probably just start making the upgrades to the station now. We'll wait for the next pause, but our assault alien life forms in the Bogota region was successful. We estimate we reduced the alien flora and fauna in this region by 77%, but it's likely that some remains.
Together, we're stronger. Apart, we're weaker, yeah? Sounds great on paper, love. But the trouble is, there's always some bloke with a loud voice who wants to keep us apart, and a whole lot of someone else's bankrolling him. Commander Fiona Ayawade, personal correspondence.
All right, this is a neat one. So, scientists around the world have gained a full understanding of unity movements. The resistance contributed the most science to the effort and will select a new direction for global research. Historically, people are defined by national and geographical borders. Recent decades, however, have seen political and cultural movements that span countries and continents alike, as computers and smartphones rendered possible instant communication with anyone, anywhere, and made physical location increasingly irrelevant. By beginning the long process of organizing like-minded states into new alliances, and even collectives, the peoples of the world will be better able to endure the seismic changes caused by both the alien arrival and humanity's rapid technological evolution. This will require a new approach to democracy and, in some cases, the overthrow of unsympathetic local leaders. The disruption will be unthinkable, but there is potential for even greater world unity in its wake. So, I'm going to take a quick second here to talk. Well, a quick second by my standards is, half an hour. But it's worth kind of talking about the fact that we, for a while now, have been working towards some particular goals. So we put quite a bit of effort into trying to get North America locked down, and we have. But as you can see, I've been struggling to get my control points in order. So I've been trying. There's a limit on my expansion in the form of the control points. It's not a particularly burdensome one. You can, in fact, go higher, and then you just start getting penalties in terms of maintenance and your ability to defend those points. But I'm trying to do a few things here, and one of them is to make sure that I keep within my guidelines for the control points. If you can just give me a second. I'm barefoot right now, and it is negative temperature, and I'm by a window, so my feet are very cold. I've got some wool socks nearby, and I'm going to put them on, so back in a second. I also have part of a turkey bagel, so I'll try not to eat it too much on stream, but I'm feeling a little peckish. All right, so we've locked down North America, but that comes at the cost of our control points. So we've been investing a lot inside of it, but in the end, we still haven't really realized the full benefit, because in the end, we're just trying to control too many disparate nations. One of the ways that we're going to be able to expand our reach is not just by increasing the control point cap, but by unifying the nations. But that needs to be done through technology, and that's essentially why we were pursuing unity movements. In addition, another pursuit that we had was the main goal inside of the tutorial, which is to start building some ships. Now, we weren't going to be building ships until we were able to basically pay for them resource-wise. More importantly, I specifically wanted to make sure that we had something of an economy going where we wouldn't be using sort of cash and boost. I actually have starved myself of cash to try and reinvest in nations. Whether or not that's actually turned out is another question, but in this particular case here, we're seeing the realization of both of those goals around the same time. So in December, Havelock Base was up and running and it was generating resources for us. And then in January, we've completed unity movements, which means we can really start working towards the unification of North America and then eventually North and Central America. Now, I'm actually going to close out tech for a little while, and it's because I want to focus on the station. Actually, I could have hit this button. So we may actually have enough just to be able to build the space dock and the solar collector right away. So yeah, it says build in space, so we've got more enough in terms of volatiles, we've got 1.1 in terms of base metals, and noble metals 0.75. So you can notice the difference here, right? 16.3. Now, admittedly, part of that dollar value was to purchase them. But in order to launch it, there would be a cost in terms of cash and boost, and there's no reason. I mean, effectively, as far as space is concerned, it just automatically gets transferred over. And that's effectively what the Martian base accomplished. So we can also build a dock. That's going to take 30 days. Now, this takes 2 volatiles, 5.2 base metals, and 0.8 noble metals, but again, we've got a really big stack here, so we're good to go. Please tell me I didn't... Yes, solar collector and space dock. And the reason for this is that the space dock requires 10 power, so it's a little inefficient. I've got 20 power being generated, but only 15 being used. But hopefully we'll get some expansion that allows me to, to add some more modules. Adding like some military science would be great because that also gives me terrestrial benefits as well. But that's a separate consideration. So in 30 days, we will have made some progress on our one of our goals. Also, it just starts looking cooler once you have a proper satellite. All right. Back to Earth. So it doesn't look like there's much in terms of organizations for us to play around with. So let's think instead about the actions that I want my people to take. Oh, hang on, we haven't crossed over the turn. Right, we haven't crossed over the turn because of the tech. All right. Silly me. So, there's 2 things that I want to do here. So number 1, covert operations gives us a 6th counselor, and I want to know what it takes to get that. So we're going to go to the tech tree. I'm probably not going to aim for it, but it wouldn't hurt to... So covert operations requires clandestine cells, which we've gotten, and quantum encryption, which we don't have, and we don't have its prerequisite of quantum computing. Nor do we have its prerequisite of advanced atomic manipulation, or its prerequisite of photonic computing. So that might be something for me to keep in mind for future turns. It feels like we've neglected our ability to gain some new operatives, and that would definitely be opening up a lot for me. Now, the fact of the matter is that we got Unity movements for a reason. I don't know if it would make sense for me to... No, we can find it here. So there's domestic politics. Oh, crap. Oh, good, okay. I thought I selected something by mistake. Okay, so here's Unity movements. So what's our goal? Again, we are looking for a united North America, which is, well, greater united North America eventually. So United States of America gains a claim on the following regions: Monterrey, Mexico City, Santo Domingo, Havana, Georgetown, Williamstead, Guatemala City, Belize City, God, I can't pronounce that, Tegucigalpa? San Salvador, Managua, San Jose, and Panama City. That's a way down the road. Tegucigalpa? Sorry, I'm Canadian. I have no hope. But thank you, Lexicon. Appropriately named, by the way, and thank you for your earlier follow. Okay, so United North America basically gives us Canada. So Vancouver, Whitehorse, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Nuuk. But the prerequisite for that is Great Nations, which I don't actually think gets me anything on its own. Now, there are a few intermediate steps that I have. For those of you who don't know, Vanguard Master has served in the Canadian Forces, and so where in the United States, anybody who enlists in the armed forces needs to swear an oath to the Constitution. This is actually an important point, of course, because it's the one question that people have. You know, if an authoritarian leader were to sort of rise, would they have the endorsement of the military? And that's not necessarily assured because, of course, the oath is not to the leader. The oath is to the Constitution. Of course, the Constitution has some fairly strong views on single, strong leaders. But, of course, Canada is a very different, sort of a very different matter. In fact, our Constitution is very new. Well, I mean, Constitution is one thing, but like our Charter of Rights and Freedoms is relatively new. Like we're talking about the 80s kind of new. And in fact, it has this thing called the Notwithstanding Clause, which means that everything except a few rights, such as, you know, elections and that, can be suspended by provinces. In fact, it's been used a little bit more often. But so very different context in terms of Canada. But the thing that's most relevant is to the armed forces, because of course you have the question in terms of what is the oath towards. And this is important because, again, if it ever comes to it, you want to know ultimately who's the military accountable to, who do they serve, for lack of a better term. And it is in fact the head of state, this large Canada goose, largely a ceremonial role, but ultimately is one that is sort of backed up with the threat of violence. And so while implicitly people who are born in Canada have sort of, it's assumed that they have this oath to the great Canada goose, it's not usually formally declared unless you are part of a citizenship ceremony, or if you try and join, various forms of the national security apparatus. So things like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or, the CAF or such. Yes, also the leader of the Air Force. Of course, many people are not familiar with that. I believe the forces are... Well, it's always... I know the forces are in this weird position of being, like, united but not really united. Like, I know there's the separate uniforms, but I believe the division is not the same as the states, where there really is that true separation between, like, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and so on and so forth. I guess there's a division between, like, the Coast Guard in Canada and the CAF. But I also know, that policy was implemented and then sort of reversed, and then it's all, in, at least from an outside perspective, it's a big gray zone. So, anyway, sorry, there's my silly story about the reign of the Canada Goose. So, anyways, we are interested in great nations, not necessarily because of what it individually gets me, but what it will unlock in terms of our big game. Now, there's a couple of other things that we can consider, right? Because once you have unity movements, there's lots of options here, right? You could go for something more modest, and in this case, we've got the Aslan Nation, which would gain claims on, like, Los Angeles, Monterey, Denver. Like, this would sort of be a breakup of the United States, effectively. And then you've got, Central American Confederation that you have here, which would only cost 1,000. And you can sort of see how between, like, Panama City, San Jose, Managua, San Salvador, it was Tegucigalpa. This would be sort of an intermediate step where I can maybe try and consolidate these regions and then eventually roll that into the larger entity. Of course, the drawback there is that I'm already struggling to try and keep myself on top of the research agenda, so I actually see a big benefit to taking a much longer research project. But these are the sorts of things that I would be considering. I'll definitely say that position 1 I am going to dedicate towards the large nation project. So in this case, we will select great nations, assuming we have the option. But that's kind of where a lot of the thinking has been going. You haven't played this game since early access launch. Has it changed much? They've been doing pretty regular updates, actually. I'm assuming you've got it on Steam. So if you take a look, they actually just put out a patch today. I wouldn't say the game I'm not noticing the substantial change, but my progress in the game has been very slow for reasons that you probably can identify. So it's a little hard for me to say for sure what the biggest change has been. All three branches are part of the CAF, but they each have their own command structures and their own vocabulary, which makes for some interesting moments at times. And our CG is its own little thing. All the CG guys that I met were very surfer dude kind of guys, laid back and chill all the way through. Okay, so I've got these competing priorities right now of the fact that Humanity First is actually outdoing me research-wise in Arrival Security, but I also want to get a nice big early bonus on Great Nations. So I think what I'm going to do, I need to make sure I don't have anything, this doesn't go lower than 11,488, but I think what I'm going to do is just make this, yeah. This is going to be messed up for the next period's record. It's going to be 2 days at this different level. But I want to try and make some progress on Great Nations because in March, militarization of space is going to finish. But like I said, this is all in line with us achieving a few goals that we have been working towards since the very beginning of the playthrough. So, what's going on here? In fact, while I am...
We'll be ready for new orders soon.
While I'm paused, there was one thing I was meaning to take a look at in Europe. So one thing I've just noticed in general is that the AI is doing a very good job of generating a lot of boost in mission control, and it's clearly through their investment in a lot of space programs. So what I'd kind of like a look at here is... Thing is, I don't think I can quite do something like that for the United States, which also needs to maintain a military. So what if we had a... My god. They're not investing anything but... okay. Let's try and find some developing nations without a space program yet. Looks like it's just regions that I control. So yeah, Turkmenistan doesn't have anybody controlling it, so that doesn't really count. This is just kind of a sad... Oh wow, Exodus has just sort of not cared about the South American space program. Okay. But yeah, you can kind of see all these little space centers cropping up around the world. It's just my regions that it's not being invested in, and you can clearly see, right? Like we are investing fairly heavily in these spaceflight programs. So let's maybe just take a look as a share of the overall budget. Yeah, 45%, 22. That's it's the share of the overall budget that's making this happen. Not much I can do about it though, to be honest. So I've also got my work cut out for me next turn, so let's watch a couple days pass by. I think the plan is to have a couple of different scenarios by the time the main game is released. I think they might have pushed one of the ones to like a future DLC or like something that's not intended to be a 1.0, but I do believe they have a plan for like future, I think there was like a future scenario and a past scenario. Both of which will be interesting because obviously military tech is a factor. We haven't had an alien land on the world yet, but that really is the XCOM scenario, right? Where the aliens start off technologically advanced and able to hurt you. I mean, I think there's a reason why you have the ability to wield nukes, and I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with using them against other humans. All right, we're gonna see a lot of these crop up from Unity movements. Okay, so it's kind of year zero. You've been unable to finish any game of TA due to bug fixes or bad starts. Yeah, one of the things I'm kind of hoping for here is that at the very least I just get clobbered by the AI, because at least losing I'm able to identify what I did wrong. But if I like feel like I've worked myself into a corner, like the worst one for me by far was Hearts of Iron 4. Hearts of Iron 4 also, we had something nice happen. Nicaragua has the crackdown is finished, but we have enough room to keep them in. So again, we're nowhere near unifying North America, but we are incorporating more and more nations under our umbrella. But yeah, to me, I definitely see a big benefit from. Oh, interesting. So the initiative's actually pulled ahead. That's not good. Sorry, I just need to think a minute. But yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, there's something about. Sorry, the worst example for me was Hearts of Iron 4, which I really wanted to enjoy, and yet I found the way that my learning sort of happened was I would put a lot of effort into like working out this strategy that I had, and I would ultimately find out that the strategy was inadequate, but I would only find that out after several years of gameplay. And the consequence of that was I sort of felt like all of that time had been wasted. I don't know what to say to you, Nexus. I don't want to be told how to play the game. I'm specifically not even going to look into that now because I think it is important to establish I think it's important to establish rules. So I am happy to ruin this save on that point. And I would appreciate you to take the... I've tried to be, like, subtle and nice about this, but I'm just going to say it directly. Please stop telling me how to play the game, because this is the third time tonight. I'm trying to have a sense of humor about it, but it does actually make me not want to play the game more. And I have another 45 minutes to go for today. No, I don't feel I need a backseating tag because I think most broadcasters reasonably do not want to be told how to do that. And I think the expectation should be that you don't tell people how to do things. If they want to be told how to do things, they'll ask, rather than people just kind of coming in and ruining things for people. But anyways, back to the thing I actually want to talk about, which is HOI 4. So I really tried several times on it, but the problem was that I would often find, and I mean, again, it's a game that many people love and understand. So it's clearly a me problem, but in this case here, just I found that the information that I was getting in terms of what I thought was going wrong relative to what was actually going wrong, ultimately the trade-off in terms of the ultimate payoff really was too unbalanced. So I mean, I'm sure I'll install it and try it again at some point in the future, but you know, it is what it is. And I mean, again, like, you don't have to love every game. Like, sometimes stuff isn't for you, and that's okay. I think I'm gonna do an all hands on deck approach because we're still 40 research behind Humanity First on this one. I hate that I'm picking the pocket of council engineering, but I need, especially because we're also going to have to push ahead on militarization of space. I'd like to try and get a little bit of a head start on a few of these so I can start giving some of that back when we start researching the next one. Or I just like the clarity that we're not going to be able to maintain all three in the future, and then just decide which one to give up on. So, Nexus General, it's not that I expect people... I just want to be really clear on this, right? It's not that I expect people to have perfect knowledge of the playthrough, and I don't mind people asking questions and things like that. What I do mind is when I'm given instructions on things to do. And I feel like I've been pretty clear on this a few times during the playthrough. Like, part of this is the opportunity to figure out a game on my own. And one of the big reasons for doing that is when I play games like this and I play other comparable games, I run into a lot of people who do tell me what to do. And I'm able to look at wikis, I'm able to look at lots of other things like anyone else. It's not that I don't understand how Google works. But what I also notice is that given enough time, I will find that those same people also wind up saying things like, I never knew that you could do X. And to me, the thing that is most rewarding for playing these kinds of games is the ability, number one, to try and figure things out, to try and go through different strategies and figure out sort of what works for me, to try and understand how the developers have communicated how they think the game should be played, either through tutorials or through, little bits of text inside of the game. But on top of that, it's also the opportunity to sort of kind of poke at things that maybe weren't entirely clear, and instead of just relying on assumptions or hearsay, to actually try and build a mental framework for understanding what's going on inside of the game. And I feel that the cost of making mistakes or overlooking things is kind of the price of admission for being able to discover really cool and enjoyable things about the game. And ultimately, because in the end, all that I really have is my ability to talk about the game as I'm playing it, I generally feel that turning it into Twitch plays is something that basically makes me irrelevant as a broadcaster. So I understand some people like doing that, and in the end, I just have to say that, there are other people who stream this game, and they may be more accommodating to this sort of thing. But in the end, all I have is my voice, right? And so if that voice is ultimately taken away by people who would rather be playing the game rather than me playing it, it's an incompatibility that doesn't work for me, and it does make it very difficult to continue to play. So again, I'm trying not to be unreasonable about this, but it's gotten to a point now I actually have to take the time to set aside and explain why it is the way that it is, and specifically how I didn't appreciate the contributions that you made recently, because generally I actually quite like the contributions you have to make to the game. It's specifically today that seem to have had these repeated incidents. So I'm hoping that is as clear as I can be on this issue. But I am going to move on now because I think we're here for Terra Invicta, not my quirks as a broadcaster. All right, I don't believe there's any aliens to blow up, but we do have alien activity. Just one,
We'll
though, in
recon
the
the
EU.
sites.
I can't remember. I think it was a takeover?
Ready for my mission.
No. Andre, I think we've hit our... There's no hard goal. I mean, our ultimate reason here is the more public opinion you have, the more influence you get, although we're not exactly hurting. Well, I mean, we're starting to give up a bit of influence. But I think in general we're doing okay. But I think we either want to make a move on Cuba or the Caribbean states. And I actually think Caribbean states is nice because not only will we be improving our position here, especially if we wind up losing this, but it's going to be something that'll help us take away from the servants. So I figure being able to do something that will improve my standing as well as hurt the enemy is a good choice.
I will tell our story.
So he's going to be stuck there for a while. And then Toby's pretty much always going to be in the US from now on.
Offering support.
So I'm hoping that science situation is a temporary one. Okay, yeah, again, we'll be seeing a number of those coming up as a result of the Unity movements. So named because of the game engine. Hey, we finally got a spaceflight program for Panama, so that'll hopefully start helping us catch up in terms of boost.
Violence is abating.
Violence is abating.
Okay, that's a permanent assignment to the Caribbean states. We've moved up to 12%. That's interesting. 38 from 44. That's a big drop. You know, I think given the number of... This is one thing that I think the game could improve on. The number of new special projects that you, or council engineering projects that you unlock from Unity movements. And there's other texts like this. It would be nice if you had an option, like you'll notice that both of the options are like take me there or continue, but both of them are pauses. And it would be kind of nice if you had a play button you could work with. Okay, widespread panic about the aliens appears ready to break out in Anchorage. Rumors about alien experiments on people in the area have led to distrust of the government's ability to keep people safe. Authorities are fearful of civil unrest. So if we're the initiative, we can profit off of it. We can deploy our forces to quell any disturbances. Now, obviously, the United States is pretty fragile in terms of democracy. We've been working quite hard to get that number up. So even deploying forces to quell disturbances is a big cost. But would I be willing to give up a whole point of cohesion and unrest? No, in this case, you know, we deploy the forces for a reason. I will admit, these are the sorts of decisions I actually really like in strategy games like this one. So, like, I think we talked about in Old World how the, like, or any 4X game, right? You know, deep down as a person, you know that, like, slavery is just this really repellent institution that has existed for a large part of our history. And just naturally, you just feel bad picking it. And so I would hope the tendency is for people to underselect slavery as a game mechanic. And so I believe in the case of Old World, they actually give a really big bonus for slavery for it to be... I mean, because, like, then there's the point, like, there's a reason people did it. It's a horrible reason, but, like, they did it because they wanted a particular outcome. And in the case... yeah, it does absolutely still exist. So what's interesting, I think, is how some games kind of go out of their way to like to properly make hard decisions hard ones, right? So in this case here, right, like I'm looking at a nation and I'm saying it's like, oh, you know, we've been working so hard, we've been investing in knowledge, we've been trying to get the democratic value up. You know, clearly we, you know, I mean, actually, the investment in Unity doesn't help either, because this is sort of working at cross purposes, right? Because Unity is definitely pushing back against the democratic score. But you know, you think about it, there's some games, particularly narrative games, where it'll be like, you know, do you want to do the good thing or the terrible thing? Or actually, a good example of this would be BioShock, right? So BioShock, you're presented with something that... I'm actually taking this from an interesting talk that Soren Johnson did about sort of themes and mechanics in games, where you would say... you know, you're presented with this moral dilemma in the form of a, you know, do you harvest the little sister for the extra atom, or do you, you know, do you do the good thing and, you know, only take a little bit of atom? But if you actually measure the amount of atom that you get, especially through the rewards that the game gives you for doing the right thing, the difference is small to non-existent at certain points of the game between the players that go for full harvest versus, you know, being a good person. And so at that point, you know, you sort of wonder, well, is it all that much of a dilemma, right? So what I like about that particular one is like, well, why do you see big police crackdowns, right? Like, why do you see, certain checks? Like, why are you not allowed to bring certain things on planes? Why, do you have video cameras, in certain parts of the city? Like, these are all things that I am okay with. Like, I've made my peace with the fact that we live in societies that do these things, and yet on the other hand, you think about it, it's like, well, I suppose as a whole, like, that is sort of a rolling back of liberties to a certain extent. I mean, again, public cameras are maybe not so big of a deal because, like, you're out in public, people are already seeing you, right? But you'd think, right, it's like, oh, why would you take the action to, like, decrease the democratic value of your country? It's like, well, because right now you have a big cohesion problem, which is creating unrest, and if you don't deal with this problem, if you don't crack down on the problem in admittedly a difficult way, you have the problem that the situation's going to get even worse, and that may lead to even more problems in terms of democracy. Those are the sorts of things that I think are hard to build inside of a game, but I really do think make for the most rewarding game experiences. Hello, Gleger. The Caribbean States has joined the list of spacefaring nations by launching a small satellite to orbit. Factions may begin to boost and mission control there. So we'll just continue. Oh, interesting. So I was talking about how I wanted an option that was continue, close, and take me there, so there is a continue. I wonder why it didn't show up on those other ones.
We found something.
I've learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in the European Union. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research going forward. So obviously we want to deal with the activity in Mexico when we can. I wonder if we can still see the alien agent. No, we cannot.
Your orders?
Okay, so Gennardi's going to deal with
We'll
the
see what we can find.
activity. Let's just take a quick look if we've got any upgrades, or I don't think there's any new organizations. It's 20 for both of them now. Okay, I wish I had a better idea about how to make use of this information. Honestly, most of the time I just clear it all out without thinking. So the initiative's still pulling ahead of us on this. So maybe let's take a look and see what the difference is here. Sambidextrous, I'm going to go make dinner and watch The Last of Us. Hope you have a great rest of your stream. Thank you very much, Sambidextrous. And thank you for hanging out for a game which I realize is very far away from what you normally do. I hope at least the dialogue was worth it, although I don't feel like I've been contributing as much as I should. Okay. So I think this is the point where I probably need to consider taking the loss on great nations. But there's a couple more tricks I can pull. So obviously you still want to make progress on militarization of space, and in this case, Humanity First isn't investing anything in it, so we're in good shape there. Now arrival security, 1945 to there, 1798. So what I'm going to do here is compare, it's got 357 minus 34. So we earned 323 over the last couple months on that. So contrast that to the initiative, which is probably going all out. Yeah, so they added 395. So in principle, we can we can catch up with them, but I can't split it between arrival security and great nations. So we're at 1945 from 1622. That number shouldn't be surprising because I'm putting 15844 into both. Compare that to Humanity First, 1798. Good lord, they're putting 285 in this now. Yeah, so this is the challenge. The AI is starting to... The AI is definitely starting to specialize. So... I can lose 10%. I mean, I don't feel good about it, but let's give it a shot.
I will help.
We'll be able to move AMV out of Mexico soon. I didn't appreciate that this was an engineering project as opposed to something that I needed to research globally. So this is actually, for 1,000, this is probably worth it.
Things are cooling off.
This is one
Our
thing I
efforts didn't
keep
have any
forgetting
effect.
about on the
We're winning their hearts and minds.
tech tree. So when I take a look at, I don't know, what was one of the ones I was... I keep looking on the left-hand side where what I need to be focusing on is the right-hand side. Wait a minute, does that make sense? Nope, that doesn't make sense either. I'm going to do close and pause for a second. Okay, so I'm doing Great Nations. Great Nations is in order to enable... Nope, okay, fair enough. It is actually to enable a whole bunch of engineering projects. So, it is actually just the idea of getting Great Nations. Cool. Again, I'm a bit of an airhead, so I keep forgetting about that difference, but that's an important one. Okay, I'm going to take a second here to clear out this log. I suspect there was probably an alert saying that we finished a step in the tutorial. I'm going to bring that up in a second. I think that's going to be another mission for us to work on. Okay. So it may take several years to accomplish. Research Interplanetary Warships Project. Interplanetary Warships allows you to design and construct gunship, escort, and corvette ship classes. Construct a space dock module. Stations require a space dock module to construct ships. Construct a space dock on one of your stations. Go to the fleet screen and select, click on the Design Ship Class button. Follow the Ship Designer tutorial and complete a ship design. Once you are happy with the design, save the template so it can be used to construct a ship. And then in the fleet screen, use the ship construction screen to order a specific ship's construction using a template you have created. Cool. So... Sorry, it says design. I just want to make sure I got this right. Yeah, design ship class.
From the ship designer, we can design new ship classes or plan to refit ships we have already built.
Now, I have not touched space combat at all, so this is definitely going to take some effort on my part. But this is actually the stuff I like the most, because this is my opportunity to really dig in to the first version, so again, the version that a player is going to be confronted with, I'm going to probably lose in space, and then I will refine the approach based off of what I learned from implementing what the game has told me. So this screen is where you create your ship designs. First, select a hull from the list. This determines the layout of the ship and how many weapons modules you can add. This tab contains all available nose weapons. Left-click a module to view more details in the bottom left box. To add a module to the design, simply right-click or drag and drop into matching shape below. Nose weapons fire in a limited arc out of the top of the vessel. Right-click the weapon subtabs to see a list view of available modules. Selected module data. This area contains additional details on any module that you left-click. Left-click this tab to view all the available hull weapons. Hull weapons have the full field of fire in all directions around a ship, but they aren't as powerful as nose weapons. This tab contains all available utility modules. Utility modules provide additional functionality or abilities to the ship. Radiators are required and maintain a functional temperature within the ship. If heat is not properly managed, the ship will take internal damage and eventually experience catastrophic failure. Batteries are required to store energy so that they can be used by other systems on demand. Power plants are required to generate energy for your other systems. Drives are required and are responsible for propelling your ship through space. You may have up to 6 thrusters on a drive module, each one increasing the ship's thrust. You can also increase the number of propellant tanks to provide more. Now, is this because it doesn't have the delta symbol inside of Unity? Or is this a different... Is this a different sign that I'm just not familiar with? I'm better at math than I am at physics. Armor modules protect your ship in combat. There are 3 armored slots, nose, lateral, and tail. A point of lateral armor is much heavier than nose or tail armor because it has a much greater surface area to cover. Ship data. This section shows the overall characteristics of your designed ship and updates with any module changes. Mass influences the ship's maneuverability. Higher mass decreases delta V and turn rates. Cruise acceleration. This is how quickly a ship can change its velocity in the strategy layer. Higher cruise accelerations allow ships to overcome a space body's gravity and take more direct trajectories to their destination. Combat acceleration. This is how quickly a ship can change its velocity in the combat layer. Delta V, measured in kilometers per second, is the critical stat for a ship that determines where it can go and how fast it can get there. More propellant increases delta V. More mass on the ship decreases it. Efficient drives with high exhaust velocity value use less propellant to get the same thrust as less efficient drives. Note that with less than 5 kilometers per second delta V may have trouble reaching the moon from an Earth orbit. Ships with less than 10 kilometers per second delta V may not be able to reliably perform interplanetary transfers from Earth. Trips to the outer planet or ships intended for heavy maneuvering in combat may require more. In some cases, ships with low delta V may have to wait for favorable alignment of planets, called a launch window, before they can depart. Okay, I'm actually going to start writing down a few of these things because there's no way that I'm going to remember all of this. But okay. So one of the things you can also take out of this too, right, is the amount of time that they spend addressing a topic. Clearly the delta V explanation was... So this is the other challenge, right? So one of the things is the delta V explanation is very detailed. I, of course, expect that there's going to be something I need to learn about radiators. But yeah, like, you can kind of get an idea in terms of relative importance just based on the amount of time that they spend explaining something. Turn rate. This is how quickly your ship can change its orientation in combat. This value is dependent on the length and mass of your ship. Shorter ships will turn faster, all things being equal. Turns out Kerbal 2 is actually supposed to be part of this game, so they needed to explain delta. Heat sinks serve as a temporary substitute for the ship's heat management while a ship's vulnerable radiators are retracted in combat. Waste heat from ship systems are dumped into these sinks and stored until it can be expelled safely. Heat sinks have a capacity measured in gigajoules. Higher values allow the ship to fight longer without extending its radiators. Battery capacity. The ship's batteries store power from its power plant for use by many weapon systems when the power plant is unavailable to supply power due to damage or when the ship's drive is active. More advanced batteries are able to recharge during combat. Cost. This is the cost in space resources to build the ship. If the resources are readily available on Earth, you may substitute this boost in money substitute the boost in money resource at shipyards, although it will lengthen the time to complete it while awaiting delivery. This is how long it'll take to build the ship. Once all the required materials are at the shipyard, larger shipyards reduce build time. And once you've finished designing your ship class, click here to save the design. This will be unavailable for incomplete designs. Okay. I'm not gonna lie, I actually don't think this... I feel like this could have used a couple of example... Yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. Auto design. Okay, it's tempting to try this auto design here, but I feel like it would be better for me to work this out first, and then compare it to the auto design. So, nose hardpoints mount forward-facing weapons on the ship. Again, just looking at the amount of time, I may not... This may be sort of where the stream ends, and we pick up on ship design afterwards, because I do actually want to spend some time learning this. So I've got nose hardpoint. Nose hardpoints mount forward-facing weapons on the ship. These weapons are generally more powerful than hull-mounted weapons, but the ship must rotate to bear on the enemy to use them. Some larger weapons may take up multiple hardpoints. Contrast that to the escort, which doesn't have a nose weapon. So hull hardpoint points mount weapons that may fire in any direction. Some larger weapons may take up multiple hardpoints, and you gain utilities. Okay. So the difference for the Corvette seems to be the hull hardpoint, which for some reason there's no hull hardpoint here. Yeah, so it seems to be the addition of the hull hardpoint and then an extra utility module here. Obviously more expensive too, but we kind of knew that. It says here that this is a transport. I can't imagine why you would call... this a transport. Click to automatically assign a role based on the ship's characteristics. Okay, that'll be an interesting one to see. Okay, so just in terms of reducing, so one of the challenges that you can run into on something like this are lots of degrees of freedom, which will paralyze you in terms of choices. One thing I know that I want is the nose hardpoint, because it sounds like that is a very powerful weapon. And then, of course, there's the question of like gunship or corvette, and it would seem to me that probably a gunship makes the most sense at the start, just because it's a lower cost item. It's a little simpler to understand. If I can build a gunship well, then presumably I'm going to be able to understand a corvette later. And if I want to understand how like hull hardpoints work, okay, fine, but I'll give that, like, I'll worry about that later. So for a nose hardpoint, right? What are my options here? Interesting. I thought it said that I could right-click for a full list. Anyways, we only have one option here, so it's the 10-inch cannon. So for utility module, we could get a water heat sink, we could get a heavy water heat sink, or a liquid hydrogen containment. So we can go faster, or we can store some heat. So a tank of water is heated while conditions prevent the ship from radiating heat into space. 100 gigajoules. Heavy water heat sink, so twice the weight, twice the capacity. Costs us more water. Okay, aluminum fin radiator. Internal ship heat is circulated in working fluids and rejected into space by large retractable aluminum panels. Combat vulnerability when deployed very high. 400 tons per gigawatt waste heat. Construction resources per gigawatt 40. We can also go for the titanium array. Slender titanium arrays operate at higher temperatures than aluminum for efficient disposal of waste heat. So I think in this case, I'd take the very high vulnerability aluminum fin radiator. And then the idea here is that maybe I should be preparing for, just kind of preparing the heat sinks accordingly. All right, ship's primary battery stores energy from the power plant and provides it to weapons, life support, and other key systems when the main power plant is unable to do so, either due to damage or when the drive is operating on ships that don't have an independently powered drive. High-power weapons can drain the battery quickly in combat. Improved batteries will have a larger capacity or faster recharge rate. You may add additional batteries of the same type in the utility module slots for greater capacity. So we only have one battery option here, lithium-ion. It's funneled through an electrolyte gel, offer lightweight but slow-charging energy storage. So we don't really get any options here. Okay, power plant, same story. Fuel cell 1, alkaline fuel cells consume hydrogen and oxygen to produce power and are recharged by a solar array. Now we have to start making some choices about drives. Okay, so this is where this is kind of where the notes become interesting. So it says that a high exhaust velocity value, all things being equal, is better because it's a more efficient engine. Now what we want to start taking a look at is what's the trade-off. So in this case here, I would note, so as it is, the rating gives me a hand here. So we've got 4.44 kilometers per second. Now, interestingly enough, this isn't actually showing me the cost. So if we have a Venture liquid rocket, it's 14 tons and 10 propellant per tank compared to 66 tons. So it uses volatiles. So why would I choose the Apex solid rocket when I have the Venture liquid rocket as an alternative? So then we have the Meteor liquid rocket, so that's 17 tons compared to the 14 tons. So, I mean, again, there's still a 0.6 difference in terms of the The Apex solid rocket also costs more. So yeah, I guess what I need to ask here is, based on the information that I have here right now, other than the fact that, you know, I would need to give up some water for it, it seems to me like this is a very good choice for a rocket. Well, yeah, but you can see it right here in terms of materials, right? So we've got the Apex solid rocket of 6.6 compared to the Venture liquid rocket of 1.4. So it not only does it have a higher velocity, either in its rating or just measuring it in terms of kilometers per second, it seems to be cheaper. So unless I have some sort of a water shortage, I can't really see a situation in which I wouldn't want to use this. So I'll add this module for now. Now this is interesting. So it says a cruise delta V of 0. So if I... Yeah, okay, so we need to add propellant tanks. I'm curious if this ever goes to something other than... You know, I'm not actually building something with this much, but... Oh, wow. Interesting. So it does actually have a value. Okay, well, let's go for something stupid like 1 million. Okay, let's just fill it with 9s then. So at least in principle, the largest value we can see here would be all 9s. Okay, so let's maybe get a read on exactly what propellant tanks are here. Tank provides 100 tons of propellant to the ship's drive, increasing the ship's delta V. Okay, understood. So to get this sort of... we need 10 at a minimum. So if we wanted to get that 10, I'd be spending 412 water. So I can see that would be a reason why I'd avoid it. Presumably if I add the utility module, which we kind of have to, like we need some kind of a heat sink. Yeah, we lose even more. Okay, so this is where I'm seeing, this is now where I'm seeing the tricky parts. So here's what we're gonna do. Like what I wanted to try and do here was work out, I kind of wanted to work out for myself, I was like, okay, given the information that I have now, like what ship would I build to meet the specifications that I need? So first thing that I want to do here is take a look to see what the auto assign role from the game would be. So it would help if they... It would help if they defined what these terms meant. So for some reason this still counts as a transport. Now it would seem to me that probably making something with 63 propellant tanks is not the done thing. So now what I want to do here is see what the auto designer does. So in this case it goes for... Oh, interesting. So it does actually go for the Venture liquid rocket, and it does go for 44 propellant tanks, so it's not that different from what I originally made. So if I were to strip out the armor, interesting. So I'm also going to take a second here and see if troop carrier or interceptor or any of these other changes the name. Okay, it does actually change some of the... So I mean, I guess the real question now is, am I willing to accept the fact that this thing is only going to have a delta V of 5.2? So again, that gets me to the moon. I suppose I can use that to try and take on some of the enemy ships. We're nowhere near what we need to be able to construct this ship. One thing that's actually fairly important for me to know now, in fact, taking a look, there's an argument that maybe I should be working with volatiles, just because I have a lot more of them. But one other thing that's really helpful in terms of going through this process of trying to build a ship is that this also is now informing what my next steps are in terms of expanding my own mining operations and that. So it's clear that right now my ideal construction is built around these venture liquid rockets. So there's one of two things that I can do. Either I can try and get better technology to support volatiles. I'm assuming that there are no ships powered by base metals. So I can either make my volatiles-based engines more efficient, or I can try and secure new sources of water. And it would seem to me that probably the search for water is a little bit more straightforward to accomplish. So, if I call this a strike, I think I'll just save this design. The ship lacks sufficient delta V for almost any transfer and may only be useful to defend a space station. Try to add more propellant, reduce mass, or use a drive with higher exhaust velocity to increase your ship's range. Do you still wish to save this design? I mean, it's the one the AI made, right? But I agree with its concern. So, our final step is going to be to find some water. This could be Luna, or this could be Mars. Well, it's clearly not going to be Luna. Unless we want to try and claim it from... Actually, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to try and take it from the Protectorate, right? Try and take Shackleton Crater. The other thing we can try and do is work with Mars. So a couple good water candidates. So yeah, I think we will found a new outpost, especially because we have the money and the boost to be able to support it. And of course, this is what sort of the purpose of some of our building up this industry is so that we can start freeing up those resources for better use here. I actually can't see why I would go for Promethei Terra. The Resistance began construction of a new outpost, Nelson Base, at Acidalia Planitia on Mars. Okay.
Here's what we found.
I've learned some useful information from my investigation of alien activity in Mexico. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research going forward. May not hurt for us to try and look for water elsewhere. Now, I will confess, I wish there was a way...
It is only a matter of time before this rush for gold turns red. To staunch the flow of blood, other nations will send their own armed envoys. It is in our best interest to be gone before that happens. Director Khalid al-Ashgar overheard private conversation.
I wish I had a better way of navigating through potential stellar bodies in terms of what I want to build, but the threat of force is often more powerful than force itself. Absent clear borders, human expansion into space will bring with it a host of dangers. Overzealous neighbors, extremist terrorism, and the threat of piracy all loom before us. It is necessary to create a reliable system of command and control alongside the armaments necessary to enforce it. if we are to have any hope of maintaining dominion of the newly acquired resources and facilities in orbit and beyond. Protection, and if necessary, preemptive defense must be prioritized. Allows the following technologies to be researched: space assault doctrine. The following projects may unlock for us to use in the future: Marine Assault Unit, Marine Platoon Barracks. So, I do get to pick the next research, but I'm probably not going to be able to pick the one after it. But I think photonic computing was going to be the thing that helped get me the 6th counselor, so I think that makes the most sense. It pains me to do so, but I'm actually going to pull back on Great Nations a bit so that we can push ahead on photonic computing. And I was going to say we can end it there, but we're actually just shy of February 16th, so... So that gives me some numbers to work with in the next period. I also messed with the numbers before, so I get to erase all of this in my tablet. Oh god, this is going to take forever. I'll worry about that on my own time. So, February 16th. Okay. So there might actually be a way to sort of navigate this. I might have been a little too pessimistic about my prospects, because if I take a look at my 695 compared to last turn's 357, so I'm earning 338. Nope, that's still too slow for the initiative, so it's actually okay that I gave back on Great Nations. Now we're clearly creaming everyone with the photonic computing, so we're almost 3 times as fast. Well, okay, let's actually look at arrival security. 236. Let's compare that to the 2065 from Humanity First. Jesus, they're still at 267, so they're still catching up on us. Okay. Let's bring photonic computing down to 8. Too much. I'm going to try that for a start. So the hope here is we're going to still be able to outpace Humanity First with arrival security. We should be outpacing the servants with photonic computing, and we've basically given up on Great Nations unless the initiative tries to do something different. Which brings me to the last thing I'm interested in. Well, sorry, there's a couple things. So we have a chance to assault an alien asset in Kharkiv. We'll move that up to 90%.
We're going in.
Now the question is, do I investigate? I think we do.
Reporting in.
But then our stability, yeah, Mexico's not fully stable, but we can afford to investigate the alien activity.
We'll see what we can find.
Where do you need me?
And I think we're just going to keep with the stability, and good lord, we're still losing out. Ugh. I gotta find out what exactly is pushing the cohesion down here. So I know we're not spending on unity, but we are spending on knowledge. There's definitely something I need to do to figure out a little bit more. I need to get a little bit better at managing the people side of things. Because if I take a look at all of my problems in countries, it's pretty routinely the people section that's the source of my trouble. The rest of the team, I'm actually happy with where they're at, so I will lock that in. But I feel like we made some reasonable progress. I'm a little worried about the ships that I've designed, but I mean, in the end, right? This is what I've got. It's auto-designed by the game. I kind of have to just accept the fact that it's not very good, and maybe hope that we can figure a better way of managing. We should actually be able to probably rough up the Victor 20. Oh, probably not. Does it give me an idea about what kind of armaments this thing has? Yeah, if we were to send something after this, it would almost certainly destroy us. I'm sure we can find this in the intel screen. So we've got the Victor 20, Victor 6. Yeah, these things are only getting stronger. So at least as far as how the game is numerically representing these ships, I don't have a chance against this thing. So I guess that's gonna have to be my next... Well, then again, it's like gunship versus destroyer, so maybe I have some unrealistic expectations in terms of what I'd be pulling off anyway. But yeah, I guess the next question I have to ask is, how do I build fleets that are going to be taking on the alien forces? But it seems to me that if Delta V is the thing that's holding me back, the answer to that is water, and we're already working on the water from Mars. So I feel like I feel like we've fallen behind in a few things, but we've also hit a few milestones that we've been working towards. So one thing that does worry me a little bit is the fact that the initiative is starting to throw its weight around as far as science is concerned. We still have a 10-point advantage, but I guess we're also trying to spread it over too much. So whether we try some kind of an alliance with them, or maybe we try, I don't know, maybe we use terrestrial operations to try and take away some of their science regions. I'm assuming it's the UK that's probably contributing so much. I'm gonna have to make some choices. As far as the other stats are concerned, we are leader in terms of influence. We are still the leader in terms of ops. By a reasonable amount, Humanity First is caught up. I still believe we are the lowest in terms of boost. Yeah, even the servants are ahead of us now. Mission control, I suspect we're a laggard as well. Yeah, we've been overtaken by the initiative, but we should still be on top. Oh no, Humanity First is also catching up in terms of control points. So, Unity movements are probably going to be the make or break for us here. Unity movements should allow me to consolidate North America and probably make a move on China. I may even want to consider trying to improve people's mood in China right now to sort of prepare the way. And hopefully that will help me out both in terms of science as well as maybe give me some more boost. I think that's going to be the long-term strategy. As for the construction of a ship, I mean, the tutorial's telling me to, but it would seem to me at this point, at minimum, I want to have the resources to be able to build it. And honestly, this is already quite expensive. There is actually one last thing I'll take a quick look at, which is under design a ship class. If we wanted a corvette, let's say, sure, call it a strike, why not? So that would go up to 18. Still with a pretty dreadful Delta V. But yeah, it's pretty clear here that our next batch of priorities in terms of research, once we've worried about terrestrial affairs, will be to improve the quality of our ships, because there's no way we're going to be able to handle. We're just simply not going to be able to handle the enemy the way that it's currently working. But I'm also going to need to spend some quality time thinking about how I can make better sense of the ship designer. There is one last feature that I will draw your attention to. If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. It's March. It is March the 6th. So one of the things I may wind up doing to try and get my head around some of these ship concepts, there is a skirmish mode in the game. So what you get to do here is deploy... Oh, now this is interesting. So the Resistance fleet is significantly outpowered compared to the AI's fleet. So maybe it is designed that you're supposed to be fighting these... with these lower quality ships against the higher quality ones, or the resistance just winds up utterly demolished because obviously the enemy force is like 3 times its size. I've avoided doing the skirmish, but I feel like maybe I should spend some time in this. I don't know if I'd do that on a stream because obviously I already spent so much time talking about other things. But I'm going to have to deal with this at some point. And the sooner I learn how to manage... The sooner I learn how space combat works, probably the better. But all of that will be dealt with in the future. So I am actually pretty happy with where we're at in terms of the playthrough, just because it's clear I'm unlocking more of the game and more of the activities that I would use the earlier turns to build towards. And it's really clear here, based on the information that I have now, that water is an extremely important resource that I should have been pursuing much more aggressively earlier on. So that's going to be something that I consider for a future playthrough. But as always, thank you everybody for watching. I don't know how many people are on right now, but I don't know. I feel like I've been I'm sort of switching between either reasonably happy with where the playthrough is going to feeling unhappy with the quality of the stream. So I hope I wasn't too dreadful for all of you. I don't see any other Terra Invicta streamers tonight, unfortunately, so let me just take a quick look and see who is online. I've got kind of two thoughts, because there's Phantom Brigade, which is really great, but I actually noticed most of the streams are not actually English streams. And then there was actually a streamer, Dr. Gluon, who was very pleasant to hang out with while we did Industries of Titan. So I think I'm actually going to raid Dr. Gluon, who's playing The Sims 4. And that's just because I don't always get a chance to host broadcasters like that. So thank you everybody for putting up with me. Plans for the rest of the week: we'll be back with Terra Invicta sometime between 7 or 8 Eastern time next Monday. Wednesday we will be playing more Phantom Brigade, and of course I'm looking forward to that. And then Friday, I don't know. I am really going to do my best to try and play Against the Storm, because it's been way too long. But I also have just been through the ringer at work, and I've got a bunch of other videos that I need to finish. I actually still have another Cultist Simulator video to record for YouTube. So no promises. It may be Cyberpunk again, but I really do want to get back to Against the Storm, because I like that game a lot, and I feel like I don't know. I just like playing the Hooded Horse games in general. I think they're an interesting publisher. They've got a great taste in games, and I'm really interested in seeing how Against the Storm is shaped up over the last little while. But thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you in the next one.
Oh, that's somebody else's house. Is there a fruitcake recipe so I can take it to people's houses? Ooh.